Hello, welcome back. This is your host, Gabriel Marrero, and I'm glad you could join me. We have a special episode today, lots to talk about. In the last episode, I spoke about the exclusive segment. Usually I divide my episodes on different subjects, but last episode I spoke exclusively on the topic of the Al-Aqsa flood, the October 7th massacres, and the subsequent genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza, and then now the expanding war in Lebanon and Iran. So that was last episode, and I was able to record pretty quickly and edit and release quickly. This episode, I'm going to speak a little more exclusively on the domestic electoral politics, as we're 2 weeks exactly away from the election. I'm recording on Tuesday, October 22nd. So yeah, 2 weeks. So we gotta hunker down. And as I've stated before, I'm planning to abstain, so I'm just going to sit back and watch things unfold. You're free to vote however you want. With this episode, I'm going to speak on the polling and just the dynamics that are unfolding. I mean, this is sort of like the last stretch. And honestly, because we've talked about October surprises, but there hasn't really been anything sort of monumental yet. Maybe I'm just been out of the loop, but yeah, we still have some time to go before there's some real big news. And some of it might be tied to Israel. So, yeah, I mean, again, as much as I want to keep things exclusive domestically, it's basically impossible to talk about these domestic developments and then not also tie in Israel, because it's our war, basically, what's happening in Israel. We're the ones funding it and supporting it and arming it. So it's our war. This is just what we have to speak on. So I will be speaking a little more freely, and I have several articles here, more articles than last episode. But yeah, again, it's who knows what's going to happen? I mean, it sort of feels like I don't know how to describe it, because last election, the 2020 election, was more intense because we're in the middle of a COVID pandemic. We just had the George Floyd riots, and there was a very real tense atmosphere. I genuinely felt, and if you go back to the times that I was recording, because I was recording at the time, I genuinely felt like there was real potential for civil unrest and violence in the street. And that's one of the reasons why I bought weapons, firearms, which didn't go so well with certain members of my family, but that's another story. But yeah, and I mean, again, there wasn't any mass national unrest. There was, of course, the January 6th insurrection. So I mean, there was real violence, political violence that came from that. So that's just a prelude for what's to come. But yeah, in this election, I don't really have that sense of worry for national violence or anything like that. I mean, who knows? It just doesn't really feel as dangerous as it was last time. There's still a lot of danger tied to it. I mean, Trump is pretty much just saying I'll honor the results if it's a fair election. That's one of the things he said at the he did the press event at the McDonald's. I'll honor the results so long as it's fair. But yeah, his supporters, who knows what they're capable of. And I live in a small Texas area, small town. So who the fuck knows what's gonna happen? Yeah, if because Trump is talking about deportations, and it's there's I don't want to have to go about my day and then deal with some fucking chud, talking about we're gonna deport you, that's a real thing that I have to. Not necessarily, I'm not worried about it. I'm sleepless nights, worrying about being deported, but it's just this is something that that could really that could really escalate. I'll say when Trump was elected in 2016, my sister, she actually had an experience of getting racially harassed, and she was in College Station, which, I mean, if you know anything about A&M, yeah, it's a bit of a sundown town. But anyway, so yeah, we'll see what happens. But before I dive deeper into electoral politics, first off, I want to talk about my different platforms, and just to, because I keep forgetting to insert my other social media platforms, and also Patreon support. Again, if you want to support me, if you think my time is worth your while, there's $1 support on Patreon. You can get early access, ad-free access. There's ads on this, and I don't usually make ad breaks specifically. I just put it at the 1 hour mark. That's just what I do. But yeah, if you want the ad-free access, you can get it through the Patreon, $1 support. That's all there is. But that's neither here nor there. And other platforms like YouTube, Twitter, you can definitely follow me there. Instagram, not exactly as active. And I just completely abandoned my Threads and other social media platforms. So who cares? I'm just going to keep it with those main ones. But yeah, so definitely follow me there, support me there. Otherwise, we'll just dive into this program. And I did want to speak before I dive, fully into the domestic electoral politics. I did want to speak on updates in Gaza, especially, the assassination or the death, because, they call it an assassination isn't exactly accurate. The death of the Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar, the famous resistance leader, political prisoner turned resistance leader, who succeeded after the assassination of Hania. He died in combat. And this is the thing that's interesting. So a lot of these Zionists, they have to really lean on this death, because that's all they can really that's all that they can really say about this war. They can just talk about we killed this commander and we killed this political operative, and that's all they can really post about and show, because if they actually discuss the tactical situation, their strategic position, it's not as secure, and especially with this war in Lebanon, it's not going so well. I just read an unofficial report, so who knows if this will ever get verified, but supposedly 6 Merkava tanks were eliminated. So that most likely, who knows? Israel's never going to confirm that. Unless Hezbollah releases videos of those operations, there's really no way to confirm it. They do have those capabilities because they have pretty advanced anti-tank weapons, but things aren't going well for them. So that's why they have to treat the deaths of these leaders as some great victory, even though it has little effect on the guerrilla operations. So here I'll talk about Al Jazeera. I'll speak from Al Jazeera about the details highlighting his death, Yahya Sinwar, which I mean, people called him a coward, and he fucking died fighting, so that's just the way to, the details that they released is that he engaged them. So nobody knew that they were engaging Yahya Sinwar until I think pretty much until they found his body. So they really didn't know. So I'll just read from Al Jazeera here. So how did Israel kill Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar? What we know so far. And in the subheader, Israel and the U.S. claim intelligence provided Sinwar's whereabouts, but this is doubtful. So this is just a quick article from Al Jazeera here. On Thursday, news that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, 62, had been killed fighting a group of Israeli trainee soldiers who came upon him by chance first began to circulate. On Friday, Hamas confirmed his death while engaged in battle in Tal al-Sultan, Rafah, on Wednesday. The fact that Sinwar died fighting has added a final chapter to his story as a fighter and leader who had been involved with Hamas since its founding. And who was Yahya Sinwar? So Yahya Sinwar was Hamas's leader. He led Hamas in Gaza since the death of the group's political leaders, Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, and senior commander Mohammed Deif in Gaza in July this year. He spent 22 years in Israeli prison before being released in 2011 during a prisoner exchange. He is said to have directed Hamas's response to the Israeli war on Gaza, as well as the negotiations for a ceasefire. Negotiators at peace talks in Cairo and Doha say Hamas officials would halt discussions to defer to Sinwar in Gaza for instruction. Over the past year, the Israeli military has combed what remains of the Gaza Strip after it leveled much of the enclave's infrastructure and killed more than 42,000 people. Israel has been trying to kill Sinwar for allegedly planning the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October 7th, during which 1,100 people died and about 250 were taken captive. How was Sinwar killed? Was it a part of a specific operation? And they conclude no. At some point between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. on Wednesday, a patrol from the Bisglak, this is Hebrew, so I always mispronounce it wrong, but I'm just going to say it how I read it. So yeah, Bisglak Brigade, a training unit of the Israeli army, was conducting searches of the Tal as-Sultan neighborhood of Rafah. They saw a small group of fighters moving between buildings, one of whom was later identified as Sinwar. Using drones to pinpoint the fighter's location, the patrol exchanged fire with the group, killing 3 fighters. One fighter moved into a damaged building, and the patrol sent a drone after him. Defiant to the end, Sinwar, who was injured and resting in a damaged armchair, threw a stick at the drone that was searching the building to find the last masked fighter. The building was then shelled by tanks and missiles, killing Sinwar. His body remained undisturbed for some time as the soldiers were afraid of booby traps and waited until the area had been secured. Sinwar's body was then taken to a laboratory in Israel where police confirmed a match of his dental and fingerprints records taken during his previous imprisonment. Where was Sinwar killed? In Tal as-Sultan, a neighborhood the Israeli army had already mostly destroyed. An investigative group, Bellingcat, has confirmed the location. Using footage the Israeli army shot in September, this suggests that the district was already known to Israeli troops before their chance encounter with the Hamas leader this week. Did Israel find Sinwar using its intelligence? Reportedly, the unit that stumbled across Sinwar was one of trainee squad commanders who didn't know the Hamas leader was there, according to the New York Times, citing 4 unnamed Israeli officials. Both the U.S. and Israel claimed their intelligence contributed to locating Sinwar or narrowing the area where he could move around. But there isn't much evidence to support that. Responding to news of Sinwar's death, U.S. President Joe Biden said he had, quote, directed special operations personnel and our intelligence personnel to work side by side with their Israeli counterparts to help locate and track Sinwar, end quote, shortly after the Hamas-led attack on Israel. Israel also rushed to credit its intelligence, claiming their efforts had determined the area where Sinwar was and they had been closing in on the Hamas leader. What resources have been deployed to locate Sinwar? Sinwar had been the Israeli government's #1 target in Gaza since October 7th. A special unit to find Sinwar was established within Shin Bet, Israel's domestic intelligence force. Supporting Shin Bet, U.S. agencies were said to be intercepting electronic communications to help locate Sinwar and providing, quote, ground-penetrating radar, end quote. Despite all this, the man described as a, quote, dead man walking by the Israeli military evaded detection by one of the world's most sophisticated surveillance networks. Israeli and American officials said Sinwar was harder to find because he didn't use electronic communications, which could be tracked. In February, Israeli officials said Sinwar was hiding in Hamas's tunnels, surrounding himself with captives who were being used as human shields, according to the Washington Post. Israeli soldiers searched the vicinity of where Sinwar died fighting, but found no captives being used as human shields. Right. So that's what I'll read from that. But yeah, the details that are coming out here, it's pretty clear that Sinwar, engaged. He set the engagement. And they didn't know who he was until they literally had to identify his teeth, and his fingerprints. Like that's how they knew that it was him. So they didn't know. They just had a random engagement, and then they called in, the cavalry, fire support. Just like they're saying here, it's a trainee unit. So clearly they didn't have the combat ability to handle the fighters. So they just call in, artillery and missiles and tanks. And that's pretty much their whole strategy in this war because they can't fight. So they're just going to call in, artillery. Yeah. And then they just killed him. And then of course, they have they're releasing these details trying to I don't know. Because they're fascists, obviously. So they have to humiliate their enemy. And they think that we're just going to post all these images and details and just to show how cowardly he was. But it's he died till the end. He fought until the end. He was, there's that image now of him sitting in the armchair, throwing the stick at the drone. And now that's becoming a whole image. That's becoming this is being repeated all over social media. in Arab social media. So like they just, they created a martyr. I mean, that's what it is. Like that's what this whole resistance is. It's a martyrdom resistance because Israel's killing them, and they're going to fight and protect their land because like they have nowhere else to go. This is their land. And then of course, Israel's like, well, he died like a dog. Like they try to repeat like Trump. He died like a dog, and it's like he shows more bravery than certainly any of the Israelis. Like, are you kidding me? Like, Sinwar, Hania, Nasrallah, they gave their lives for this resistance, for this cause. Meanwhile, you got somebody like Netanyahu, like he wouldn't even sacrifice his like career for his own son. Like he wouldn't even, like, you fucking kidding me? Like Netanyahu is gonna get all these people in Israel killed because he wants to stay in power. It's not about protecting Israel and keeping Israel strong. Israel's weak. Israel's going to be destroyed because of Netanyahu's ambitions, okay? Meanwhile, these leaders, they gave their lives for the resistance and the cause of Palestine. So, who knows, man? It's like again, of course, I don't want to, speak too long about this figure because somebody's going to say, oh, he's supporting terrorism. And he's just, like, shut up, okay? Like, and of course, now there's like this whole thing with like Ethan Klein and H3, doxing and banning people. So it's like there's like real pushback against like any sort of like sympathy for the Palestinian resistance. Anyway, it's bullshit. I mean, again, that's all they can do. That's all they can do is post an image of, oh, we killed this dead leader, and what a great victory. And yet there's still fighters and operations in Gaza and Lebanon. This Israeli soldiers still dying. Tanks still getting blown up. It doesn't change anything. And now they're trying to clear out northern Gaza, and they're basically just like mass executing people. But it doesn't change anything. Like it's just like a genocide. Like that's just what it is. And I don't know, man. It's just so crazy to see this, and then still, you got a lot of liberals getting like upset and impatient because like, oh, why didn't you vote for Kamala Harris? Because she's supporting a genocide. And it's like, oh, don't think about that. Like they're getting annoyed by that. It's ridiculous. My God. Oh, well, Trump's gonna be worse. It's like, well, sure, yeah, he probably would be worse, but Kamala Harris and Biden aren't doing anything to stop it. Or with this operation in northern Gaza, they said, oh, well, there's a 30-day period that you have to allow supplies and aid in. It's like now with the election, like basically like weeks away, now they're saying, oh, well, if you don't make the decisions and you don't provide the aid, we're gonna stop supplying you, or we're gonna stop supplying you. Yeah, after the election that we might lose. Like, just fuck off, man. I'm so tired of these people. My goodness. So yeah, so that was Yahya Sinwar in this war. Fighting till the end. And then also, yeah, another thing that I want to speak on is like, because you've got Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, like they try to come out and they try to do their speech, and they really thought that this was like their Osama bin Laden like speech moment. Like that's what the way that they treated it. But like nobody cares. Nobody fucking, like they released this whole press briefing, and it's like, who the fuck is Yahya Sinwar? Like nobody knows who that is. Like I remember when they were announcing it, and I was at work, they were playing it at one of the TVs, and it's like nobody knows who that is. Like the only people who know who Sinwar is are those who have been like tuned into this conflict and this genocide. Not even since October 7th, for like years. I mean, like he has been like a strong figure. I mean, he was in prison for 22 years. He was a prolific figure. I mean, he spoke fluent Hebrew, so even within Israeli media, like he could communicate, and like, people could understand what he was about. So yeah, so the only people who know who he was are people who are like dedicated and like active in this movement, either Zionists or pro-Palestinian supporters. But then, you see it on like, because they were playing Fox News. So you see like the header, Sinwar killed in combat. And it's like, nobody knows who that is. Like the American public does not know who that is. Okay. Like, because of course everybody knows Osama bin Laden because it was 9/11. And then, everybody, heard about him for years. Honestly, like more people knew, if I'm going to be honest, like more people in America would know about Abu al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS. I hope I'm saying that right. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I think that's it. Yeah, the former leader of ISIS. So like more people knew about him because people had, this idea of ISIS. And then, of course, people were seeing the reports of Baghdadi. And there was like a couple years that people could like get media exposure for him. So then when Trump finally killed him, there was actually some sort of like press like relevance to it that people knew about. But with Sinwar, is like nobody knows who that is, and he hasn't killed any Americans. I mean, for some Zionists, sure, they treat Israel like it's the 51st state, but I mean, most of the American public don't know. And then you have like Time Magazine, they post like the big red X over Sinwar, which is like, again, nobody knows who that is. It's just like, again, this Zionist media, it's just like, it's a victory lap that they have to make because that's all they can like rely on is the death of these figures, but not any actual like tactical or strategic victory. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I want to speak on. And, it's important to open up with this because, again, this conflict and genocide is inseparable from our own domestic political, electoral politics. Like it's not, it's very, very much linked to what we have going on. Because it's our war. I mean, it really is. As much as they want to pretend like it's Israel, like Israel cannot do what it's doing without our support and without our unconditional aid. So it's our war. So when we kill Sinwar or we kill all these people, it's us, doing it because it's our bombs. So yeah, so that's Sinwar and his death. Now to speak on some like polling stats. Again, like they're really like, it's really running tight. And it really speaks to, because like Trump should be a layup for the Democrats. But for whatever reason, they just keep falling flat because they don't want to appeal to young progressive voters. Because like this is the dynamic of like politics right now. You got the Republicans saying, oh, the Democrats, they're Marxist, they're leftist, they're radical, and they want to bring communism. And the Democrats going, nuh-uh, we're Republicans too. Like, that's basically what it's turning into. And it's very clear now that Kamala Harris is appealing to the right. Like, the calculation she's making is, let me try to appeal to moderate Republicans. Is just like, and just completely cast aside the young progressive left-leaning voters. Again, it's just ridiculous, man. Like, just to see like the political incompetence of the Democrats. Because like, like the one time a Democratic candidate actually had some like real momentum from the population, a real like leftist populism movement was Bernie Sanders. Okay. And they fucked him over. So it's like he actually demonstrated some like political competence, and he actually demonstrated like, hey, if we actually appeal to the left and actually appeal to true progressive values, then we can actually get some momentum. We can actually challenge Trump. Like it's very clear that if Sanders was the nominee, he would have won against Trump. But again, they fucked him over. And now we're in this situation where, you got Kamala Harris here, like there was like the recent video where a Palestinian protester, well, not a Palestinian, but like a Palestinian supporter who was a protester, just like speaking out. And then she's like, yes, I hear you. And it's very sad what's happening, but I'm speaking now. Like, and he's being escorted by security. So it's like, you have a right to your opinions, but you need to leave. Like that's like liberal politics. My goodness. You have a right to your opinion, but you need to leave. And also I'm going to dox you and get you fired. Like that's liberal politics now. So yeah, so I just want to speak on some like polling here, I mean, they're saying that here the Harris is in the lead, but it's so slim, and it just speaks to just, oh my God, if she loses, it's totally on her and her campaign. Okay, of course, like there are some people saying that like they're trying to like set the tone and like sort of fluffing the pillow of like if she loses the voter demographics that she can blame, and they're gonna like blame Arabs and black men, I should say. They're gonna blame leftists, right? Like they're gonna set the tone. You can already see the hostility from liberals. Like if she loses, like it's gonna be a Klan rally for the Democrats. It's just like it's gonna get bad. They're gonna get so mad at the left. Oh my God! Even though like it was their fault for running an incompetent campaign. So anyway, so I just want to speak from Reuters about different like polling here. Right, so Democratic U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris held a marginal 46% to 43% lead over Republican former President Donald Trump, with a glum electorate saying the country is on the wrong track, a new Reuters Ipsos poll found. Harris's lead in the 6-day poll, which closed on Monday, differed little from her 45% to 42% advantage over Trump in a Reuters Ipsos poll conducted a week earlier, reinforcing the view that the contest is extraordinarily tight with just 2 weeks left before the November 5th election. Both polls showed Harris with a lead within the margin of error, with the latest poll showing her ahead just 2 percentage points when using unrounded figures. The new poll showed that voters have a dim view of the state of the economy and immigration, and they generally favor Trump's approach on these issues. Some 70% of registered voters in the poll said their cost of living was on the wrong track, while 60% said the economy was heading in the wrong direction, and 65% said the same of immigration policy. Voters also said the economy and immigration, together with threats to democracy, were the country's most important problems. Asked which candidate had the better approach on the issue, Trump led on the economy 46 to 38, and on immigration 48 to 35. Immigration also ranked as the number one issue when respondents were asked what the next president should focus on most in their first 100 days in office. Some 35% picked immigration, with 11 citing income inequality and an equal 10% shares citing healthcare and taxes. But Trump fared poorly on the question of which candidate was better to address political extremism and threats to democracy, with Harris leading 42% to 35%. She also led on abortion policy and on healthcare policy. So there's another paragraph here. So an exceptionally close race. Harris's lead over Trump might not be enough to win the election, even if it holds through November 5th. National surveys, including Reuters Ipsos polls, give important signals on the views of the electorate, but the state-by-state results of the Electoral College determine the winner, with 7 battleground states likely to be decisive. Trump defeated Democrat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, triumphing in the Electoral College, even though she won the national popular vote by 2 points. Polls have shown Harris and Trump are neck and neck in those battleground states. The poll gave signs that voters, particularly Democrats, might be more enthused about this year's election than they were of the November 2020 presidential election when Democrat Joe Biden defeated Trump. Some 79% of registered voters in the poll, including 87% of Democrats and 84% of Republicans, said they were, quote, completely certain, end quote, they would cast a ballot in the presidential election. The share of sure-to-vote poll respondents was up from 74% in a Reuters Ipsos survey conducted on October 23rd through 27th, 2020, when 74% of Democrats and 79% of Republicans said they were certain to cast polls. The new poll had a margin of error of 2 percentage points. Harris entered the race in July after Biden ended his re-election effort following a poor debate performance against Trump in June. Trump at the time was widely seen as the front runner, partly based on his perceived strength on the economy after several years of high inflation under the Biden administration, which has eased in recent months. Given the close match, the candidates' efforts to ensure that their supporters actually cast ballots will likely be key in determining the winner. Just 2/3 of U.S. adults voted in the November 2020 election, which was the highest turnout in over a century, according to estimates by the U.S. Census Bureau and the Pew Research Center. Roughly 1/3 of registered voters are Democrats and 1/3 Republican, with the balance independents or those who favor third parties, according to an estimate by Pew Research. The latest Reuters Ipsos poll surveyed 4,129 U.S. adults online, nationwide, including 3,481 registered voters. Some 3,307 of the respondents were considered the most likely to turn out on Election Day. Among those likely voters, Harris held a 3 percentage point lead over Trump, 48% to 45%. So that's at least just some initial polling here. I mean, I don't necessarily consider polling to be reliable, but it is a way to measure, where the wind is blowing. And it's just very interesting to see the issues that are at the forefront. They're talking about the economy and immigration. That's the main issues that they're speaking on. And is, really highlighting just a general reactionary trend that's happening in America right now, where there's a so-called immigration crisis, which isn't real. It's not real. There's no immigration crisis. It's just racist anxiety, white replacement anxiety. It's not the immigrants coming into this country that's making the groceries more expensive, okay, and raising fuel prices. That's not what's happening. They're also trying to say oh, well, the housing market's fucked up because it's the immigrants, it's how convenient. Yeah, the immigrants, they're all taking the jobs and now they're buying all the houses and they're raising the grocery prices. It's just so, oh my God. And now we're seeing, of course, with Kamala Harris, she's trying to, position herself as being tough on the border now. Again, she's trying to appeal to the right. This is why I can't compel myself to vote for them, because it's just the Democrats are just it's like the meme from the Simpsons where it's am I losing favor and momentum in my campaign because I'm losing favor with young progressive voters? No, they're the ones out of touch. It's just no, of course not. That can't be the case. I'm not out of touch. I'm hip. I don't know, man. It's just ridiculous. It's just, dude. I feel so disillusioned. And of course, they're talking about how really again, the popular vote doesn't determine anything. It's all about the Electoral College. So I live in Texas, so it's the state's gonna go red. There's just no other way to look about it. And of course, they have the Texas Senate race between Ted Cruz and Colin Allred. I don't even think that's, good luck to him, but that's just he wins every time. Ted Cruz wins every fucking time. It's just, there's no saving this state. I'm sorry. The Texas GOP will never allow the Democrats to take power here. They will secede before they allow the Democrats to flip the state. There's just no hope for this place. And so, so of course, if I say that I'm not going to vote for Kamala Harris, I'm going to get yelled at if she loses, even though I live in Texas, where this is a firmly red state. But again, that's just the thing. They're not going to get mad at the Democrats for running an incompetent campaign. They're going to get mad at regular people like you and me who didn't fall in line, because those are real democratic values. You have to fall in line. You got to vote for the candidate that the party chooses, or you're a Republican. You're basically you voted for Trump, even though I didn't vote. So anyway, so that's at least one one summary. The Reuters Ipsos poll. And again, I'm not a big stats guy. I don't usually comment on polling too much, but it's just a good way to figure things out. I did want to also highlight another article, again, just to get a broader sense of the polling here and what's happening. So here, this is from Forbes, and they're talking here, Trump versus Harris 2024 polls. Harris leads in 4 latest surveys. So again, Kamala, she has some, she has a lead. Obviously she's going to have a little more momentum because she does appeal more to women. She can get out, the black vote for sure. Abortion is a big thing now. So even a lot of conservative women are, starting to, step away from the Republicans. I mean, yeah, Melania Trump, she came out in support of abortion. That's just like a thing that's like quietly being reported on. But yeah, she released this whole thing. Yeah, man, so she has real chances here. So I'm not denying that. But just to show, again, like this is like Hillary Clinton 2.0. It's like it shouldn't be this close. But again, because she's not going to budge on, she's not going to end the war on Gaza. She's not going to, promise any sort of like police reform. Again, like that's just like a non-existent platform for her. Okay. She's going to, continue fracking, border security bill. She's appealing to Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney. She's trying to appeal to like moderate Republicans. So it's like, oh yeah, all you leftists, you have to vote and we can push her left, even though she's very clearly trying to appeal to moderate Republicans, saying openly, I'm going to have Republicans in my cabinet, so it's like, then why don't you just be a Republican? Like she could have very easily run for the Republican Party. Like she could have done the Nikki Haley route, like it's almost like her politics are almost like indistinguishable. She's just a little more socially liberal. But again, they talk about like Obergefell, right? They talk about Roe v. Wade. It's like, well, we have to get back and we have to vote. Like, it's just like you guys had so many opportunities to codify it. But because this is the only bargaining chip that they have, they're not serious about it. So anyway, let's talk about Forbes here. So the race between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump remains a seeming dead heat just over 2 weeks before the election, according to a string of surveys that largely show Harris with a narrow national advantage, though the key swing states are virtually tied. So here's some facts here. So Harris leads by 4 points, 50 to 46 in Morning Consult's weekly poll released Tuesday, consistent with last week's results, but down from her 51% to 45% lead in the two polls prior to last week. A Reuters Ipsos poll also released Tuesday found Harris with a 3-point lead, 46% to 43, but 2 points when using rounded figures within the poll's 2-point margin of error. Last week's Reuters Ipsos poll also found her with a 3-point lead, 45% to 42%. Harris is up 1 point, 45 to 44% in a USA Today Suffolk University poll of likely voters taken October 14th to 18th, margin of error of 3.1, as Trump has narrowed the margins since the group's last poll taken in August that found Harris ahead by 5 points. Harris also led Trump by just 1 point, 49% to 48, in Emerson College's poll of likely voters published Friday after Harris posted 2-point leads in September and early October and a 4-point lead in August. Trump regained a lead over Harris in a Fox News poll released Wednesday that found him up 50% to 48% among likely voters, a change from Harris's 50 to 48% edge in September, after Trump led her 50 to 49% in August. Harris leads in 2 other surveys published Wednesday. She has a 5-point advantage, 52 to 47%, in a Marist College poll of likely voters, up from Harris's 2-point edge in the closely watched pollster September survey, and a 4-point 49 to 45% lead in an Economist YouGov likely voter poll, equal to Harris's lead last week. Several other surveys show tighter margins. Trump trails Harris 51% to 49% in October 11th to 13. Harvard CAPS Harris survey of registered voters, after the two were tied in the group's September survey. Trump and Harris were tied at 48% in a new NBC poll of registered voters released October 13th, while an ABC Ipsos poll released the same day shows Harris with a 2-point 50 to 48 advantage among likely voters. Within the ABC's polls 2.5-point margin of error, a shift after both ABC and NBC showed Harris with a roughly 5-point lead last month. A third poll out October 13th from CBS YouGov showed Harris leading Trump 51 to 48% with likely voters. slightly tighter than Harris's 52 to 48 lead last month, while Harris has a narrower 50 to 49% edge in the 7 battleground states. Harris is up 49 to 46 in a New York Times Siena poll out October 8th, the first time she's led Trump in the group's polling since July. 3 other polls over the past month, a Quinnipiac survey released September 24th and a CNN SSRS poll released September 24th showed Trump and Harris tied. Harris has erased Trump's lead over President Joe Biden since announcing her candidacy on July 21st, though her edge has decreased slightly over the past 2 months, peaking at 3.7 points in late August, according to 538's weighted poll average. So yeah, that was quite a bit, but what you can draw here, and as I just said, when she announced, her candidacy after Joe Biden stepped down, there was, of course, excitement. There was momentum because people now were like, oh my God, like, thank you. So we don't have to, pretend that this dying grandpa is going to save us, And then now, of course, over the months, it's sort of died down. Like, again, like Trump has his base, Trump has his following. So it's not like he's gaining new people. It's just that Harris is losing people. That's what's happening here. Like her support is decreasing because people are realizing, oh, she's not really going to be that much better. And again, like very, very likely tied to the escalations in the Gaza war, the Palestinian genocide, and her unwavering support of what's happening. And then also just in general, like, again, like there's really no policy platform. And like the stuff that she's announcing now, like she tried to announce this new program for for black men, we're going to start a business initiative. We want to support entrepreneurship and we're going to protect crypto assets. And I'm just like, are you like, what the fuck? Like, oh my God, like it's so ridiculous, man. Like it's just so tone deaf and out of touch. There was another ad that I saw. I don't think it was specifically Harris, Wall's campaign, because it would have been so egregious, but it was like one of those. So of course on Twitter they have these dating shows. It's like a black dating show where they have this whole line of baddies, and they have these red balloons, and then they bring a guy out, and then if they don't like him, they just pop the balloon, right? And it's so funny. Sometimes you'll see a video and the guy just he just comes around the corner and it's like 5 of them just pops it right away. It's actually pretty funny, but they made a parody of that for the voting. So they brought the guy out and they have these girls and they're just holding their balloons and then they're asking questions like, oh, what do you do for work? And oh, I'm in tech and this and that. And then they're like, are you planning to vote? Are you registered to vote? He's like, nah, I'm not about that. And then they all just pop their balloons and it's just that's their outreach to black people. It's just, my God, it's so insulting. Wow. So insulting. It's, y'all better finna vote. It's so stupid. Yeah, man. I don't know, man. And again, you can already sense some sort of hostility, especially towards black men, about, oh, well, you see, they're misogynistic towards black women. And, of course, with Kamala Harris, it's just, I don't know what they're trying to do. Because again, like I said, they're trying to set the tone in the event of her defeat. If she does lose, they're going to try to place the blame on a certain demographic of people, instead of actually having some self-reflection on, their lackluster policy. Because again, it's just so funny, how I'm constantly expected to vote for people who have made it obviously clear that they're not going to improve my life. It's really just you have to vote for this candidate because the other candidate is going to kill you. And it's well, this one is just killing me softly. So it's I'm going to die anyway. Well, you're going to die anyway, so, might as well vote for the one who's going to kill you softly. That's just basically it. Anyway, so I'm going to continue with this. So, who is favored to win the election, Harris or Trump? Trump is favored to win 53 times out of 100. I said I was reading from Forbes. So 53 times out of 100 compared to 47 for Harris, according to 538's election forecast. Political analyst and statistician Nate Silver also gives Trump a narrow edge, but wrote recently he's, quote, never seen an election in which the forecast spent more time in the vicinity of 50-50, end quote. And then, right, the deviations, right, big number. So 0.8, that's how many points Harris leads Trump in a Real Clear Politics latest polling average. Meanwhile, 538's average shows Harris with a 1.8 lead. And Nate Silver has Harris up 1.6 in his Silver Bulletin forecast. How does Harris perform against Trump in swing states? Harris leads narrowly in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada, while Trump has an advantage in Pennsylvania, Arizona, North Carolina, and Georgia, according to 538's polling averages. That means Trump would win the election if the state-level polling proves to be exactly right, but all 7 swing states are within single digits, and most have margins of errors of less than a percentage point. That's just crazy, man. It's just so close. And again, like, it didn't have to be this close. It's just, again, she's losing momentum with young progressive people, left-leaning people, and she's trying to appeal to the right. And, like, obviously the Democrats are never going to learn that doesn't work. They're just going to, and if she loses, they're just going to become more right-wing and reactionary. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Here, right, so another paragraph, a surprising fact. A poll from NBC News released September 29th found that while Harris still leads Trump among Latinos, the lead is shrinking. The NBC News Telemundo CNBC poll, which was conducted September 16th to 23rd among 1,000 registered Latino voters, showed 54% supported Harris compared with 40% who supported Trump and 6% who said they were unsure who they would vote for. The support for Harris is higher than it was when Biden was running against Trump, NBC said, but it is still significantly lower than past leads Democratic candidates have had, including a 36% lead in 2020 polling and 50% lead, 50-point lead in 2016 polling. The poll had a margin of error of 3.1 percentage points. How did the debate impact polls? Pre-debate surveys found Harris' polling surge appeared to plateau, including an NPR PBS Marist survey of registered voters taken September 3rd to the 5th that showed Harris leading Trump 49% to 48%, down from a 3-point lead in August. Most debate surveys showed the majority of respondents believe Harris won the debate, but not enough to significantly impact the horse race between the two. A New York Times Siena poll of likely voters released September 19th found the majority of voters in every demographic gave positive reviews of Harris's September 10th debate performance, with 67% overall saying she did well compared to 40% who said the same about Trump. Harris was up 52% to 46% among likely voters and 51% to 47% among registered voters in an ABC News Ipsos poll taken days following the debate on September 11th to the 13th, essentially unchanged from her 6-point leads with likely voters in late August and early August ABC Ipsos surveys, even though 63% of Americans said Harris won last week's debate. Key background: Biden dropped out of the race on July 21st after resisting calls from within his own party for weeks to end his re-election bid in the wake of his disastrous performance in the June 27th debate. I just love now that people are saying that it was a disastrous debate. Like, I just love that now it's becoming more mainstream to say that he fucked up. Right. He immediately endorsed Harris, and she announced plans to seek the nomination. The party quickly coalesced around her, with 99% of Democratic delegates voting to officially nominate her in a virtual roll call prior to the Democratic National Convention in August. Harris tapped Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as her running mate weeks after Trump announced Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as her pick for vice president. ABC News hosted the first debate between Harris and Trump on September 10th from Philadelphia. Harris's rise in polls is coupled with an increase in Democratic enthusiasm for the election, which has nearly doubled since Harris's entrance into the race from 46% in June to 85% now, while enthusiasm among Republicans has stayed stagnant at 71% according to a Monmouth University poll released August 14th. Yeah, so that was quite a bit there, but again, just to show the support that's growing. I mean, it's interesting to like see. Again, it's just with Kamala Harris, like I just don't really, I have no expectations, so it's like I already know she's going to disappoint. This is not like, again, they're trying to like, I guess, recapture like the feeling of like Obama and like the hope and change, but like nothing's going to change. Like at least Obama pretended that he was going to, try to turn things around. Kamala is just saying straight up like, oh yeah, nothing's changing. We're just going to do the same stuff that Biden did, which is like, yeah. And it's a surprise that she's losing momentum and support when she says stuff like that. Or, when she campaigns with the Cheneys, or, says, I'm going to put Republicans in my cabinet, she, and then you ask about her policy positions. Like, there's no concrete policy platform. It's just like wishy-washy, like, we have to protect abortion rights. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to codify Roe v. Wade? Again, that's not even like a thing. Or, gay rights. Are you going to codify Obergefell? Or, no, like, again, that's just silent. No Medicare for all. No raising wages. Like there was one proposal that was actually somewhat good, which was like down payment assistance for first time homeowners, which is like, yes, like that is a great policy. Like we can work with that. Like that alone might have gotten my support, because it's like, dude, like, yeah, man, like first time homeowners need assistance. Like it's fucking ridiculous, this housing market. And then now I guess they changed it to a tax credit, which is just like ridiculous. Like, God, like they actually had something good, but then of course they probably got a call from a donor, and then now they've changed it. So it's just, yeah, who fucking knows? Again, and again, this is a black woman running for president, and she's not even like remotely like, again, like the BLM movement is just like dead. Like it doesn't exist anymore, even though there's still police killings, right? It's been like completely like abandoned by the Democrats. They don't speak about Black Lives Matter. And again, there was the movement, like there was like, because there's BLM, Black Lives Matter, as just like an ideology, the police reform movement. And then there's of course the actual like organization BLM, and of course there's been some controversy with them. But yeah, man, it's just like, it's really ridiculous, man. Just like the way that the Democratic Party has changed over the years compared to, the George Floyd unrest that was happening. And of course, like the Kinte, Neal from like the senators. I'm just like, it's so like, again, like, I think like we're still having like a sort of like a traumatic like blockage of those years of like the lockdown. Like again, like there's a lot of people that like try not to talk about it, Like it's interesting. So I was at work actually, and it's like, I'm really feeling my age now, because now I'm talking to like younger people who are like in their early 20s, 22, 21 years old. So like now like I can actually like talk about like my experiences and just like how things were, because like a lot of them were in high school when they were, when the pandemic was starting. And I'm sure like that was also like difficult, it's just, they didn't have to like pay for bills and stuff like, but I mean, anyway, so it's just interesting speaking to them about like, just like the gap and like, how I had to like basically survive and like the work that I was forced to do. And it's just like, a lot has changed. Again, like they try to act like 4 years is like, oh, well, 4 years is nothing. I mean, like it's like the longest 4 years of our lives, but also like the quickest, if that makes sense. Like it's been a very weird administration in the wake of this pandemic. And again, like it's just so fascinating, especially like talking about people and they try to bring up like, oh, well, what are you planning for your career? I mean, you're kind of behind on your career. And it's like, well, yeah, because there was a pandemic and an economic crisis, this, apocalyptic pandemic that fucked up the economy. And then, of course, I don't have the perfect connections to go right back into work. So, it's been a while since I could find some steady work. Sorry, like, it's just, yeah, anyway. But yeah, so to speak about, like, Kamala Harris, and just this lackluster like campaigning platform position, and like and then there's the expectation that like you still have to support this. We're not gonna improve anything in your life. Like they're pretty much openly saying that. It's just like we're not gonna do anything to fix your life, but you still gotta vote for us because Trump is gonna kill you. Like that's just what they're saying now, and it's like, again, like liberals, they want to play this game of like it's chicken basically. It's like a game of political chicken where they're putting us in this position of either you have to vote me or Trump. You have to vote for me or Trump, and then they're kind of getting like shocked where it's like, okay, well then I'm just gonna sit and let this train run me over because at least my misery will end. Like I don't care anymore. Like it's just I mean listen, man, like. Again, don't play this game of chicken and then act surprised when I call your bluff. Like, because I don't really care anymore. Like, because if you're not gonna fix my life, well then fuck it. I'm just gonna sit and watch the world burn. Because you obviously didn't want to fix anything, and I'm just one person. Again, man, it's just ridiculous, man. They don't want to fix anything. They want to address the infrastructure, healthcare services, higher education, housing prices. Grocery prices, gas prices. They don't want to fix the wage inequalities, wealth inequalities. They don't want to fix anything. They don't stand for anything, and it's still going to support this war in Gaza no matter what. It's empire or nothing. That's all that matters. We got to go to war with Iran. We got to go to war with China and Russia. Like again, like we're going to do all these wars all over the world, and our lives are going to fall apart here. It's ridiculous, but this is the death of an empire. Always. It's no longer about, actually like making life better. Now it's about the wealth and power of the elites. Like that's all that matters. Anyway, I'm going off the cuff, but that was just like some pollings, just to read some articles and just the different findings that they have, and just to show how close it is. Like it's 2 weeks away, and it's still like within a margin of an error. They're saying like less than a percentage point. It is too close. And if the Democrats lose, they're going to throw a tantrum and they're not going to have any reflection whatsoever. I'm not saying that I want them to lose, okay? Like, because like there's a lot of like left-leaning people. And of course, there's talking about like the Green Party. Like there was a whole scuffle between that. My opinion on the Green Party is that like, I like the sentiment of it, but like I just don't really believe that it has any sort of like, for starters, like if we're going to have like a third party movement, there needs to be some militancy. So there's no militancy within the movement. It's like this hippy dippy bullshit of like we're a Green Party, and I understand that there has been like ballot restrictions that Democrats have sued for. Like I get that, but again, I don't really see like the Green Party like forming like an underground movement, if that makes sense. If you're going to be like a true third party movement, there has to be some like underground aspects to it. Like this is one thing that I've started to think on. It's like if we're going to have like a third party movement, like there needs to be like some like mutual effort, like mutual aid effort. Because again, as leftists and Marxists, we have to address material conditions. So, it's one thing to like, be like a political party that has access to the ballot box, but like what sort of like community efforts, community aid? I mean, who knows? I mean, there probably are Green Party like members who do like small like like small community efforts, mutual aid efforts. So I'm not doubting that, but it needs to be a little more structured. Again, I'm not somebody to talk about organizing because like I just sit at home. That's really it. So I'm not an organizer, although I do want to step into that field more. But yeah, the Green Party I just don't really take seriously because there's no militancy and there's no like broader system of support. Anyway, that's just one thing. But yeah, so that's just like the findings of this polling. Lackluster performance of Harris, specifically Kamala Harris's campaign. And it's just so interesting about like the smugness attitude of like a lot of liberals where it's like, I mean, again, go back to the DNC and like look at all the Palestinian protesters and like they were laughing at people's faces. I mean, they were like, it's like they treated it like a joke. Like, oh my God. Like there was like this one protester reading the names of like dead children in Gaza. And like there were people like walking around just like laughing, and it's just like, oh my god, like it's just like it's a fucking like, dude, these people are despicable, man. And I mean like the liberal elitists, you know, the liberal elites of the party. It's you know that they're so out of touch. The coastal elite, so out of touch. They don't fucking care. Like they don't give a shit. So it's like, why you want me to vote for you when you're not gonna improve my life at all? You're probably gonna make it worse. It's like, no, man, like unbelievable. So that's like Kamala Harris, you know, and of course, like one thing that I've noticed is like if you make like an honest like mispronunciation, like you say because it's Kamala, but some people say Kamala, right? They like, but they get so like frustrated. Like it's like a microaggression. Like you mispronounce her name. It's Kamala. It's like, dude, like it's just like, and this isn't even like K-Hive, okay? Like the K-Hive fandom is sort of, I guess, dead. So now it's just like the Democrat, like liberal elites of like, you got to stay in line and you got to vote for our party. Again, they didn't have primaries. They didn't allow that, and they literally waited until they couldn't hide it anymore. That Biden's decline was really bad. Like again, like they talk about the disastrous debate performance. Like they're saying that out loud now that it was bad. But like if they could have gotten away with it, he would still be in it. He would be the nominee. If they could have hit it well enough that Biden was in decline, he would have been the nominee. Like that's just, again, that's why I can't vote for them, because like it's so inauthentic and it's all about power. That's all it is. That's all they want. And dude, I swear to God, if like Kamala Harris, so let's say if Kamala Harris does win, if she still keeps like those press secretaries, so like Matt Miller, that fucking creep, Patel, Karine Jean-Pierre, like if she keeps those people on, like I'm just gonna lose my mind, because like these are like the most clearest like corporate like HR careerist like staffers imaginable. Like they just want to like they're like parasites. Like they're just gonna latch on to like whatever they can to get ahead. It's just like, this is so egregious. Like, wow, man, you know. Oh my God, you know, like think about like the Trump press secretaries, right? You got like Sean Spicer, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, right? Like at least they were like funny, you know, even though that they were terrible people, and like they just, at least they were funny, you know. They were like, it was like funny to like rip on them. But like these other press secretaries, they're just fucking evil, and they're like, there's no humor behind it. It's just, they're so evil. Oh my God. Anyway, okay, I'm just like, again, you know, I'm sort of like in a flow state, so I want to actually get back to something structured. So I'm gonna read here now, because I was talking about the polling for Harris and the momentum that's sort of slowing down with her. Now I want to speak about Trump. So with Trump, there's obviously, you know, very dangerous implications of his, you know, victory in the election. I mean, honestly, you know, there's plenty of danger if he loses. If he loses, he's going to go back to that, oh, it was stolen. And who knows what could happen from that. Because we've had 4 years of, you know, Trump saying, oh, well, I was stolen the election, and we had the January 6th insurrection. Who knows what could happen now? Like I said earlier, you know, I don't really feel like there's, you know, real stakes of like a broader civil war, because in 2020 there was like an actual economic crisis and a pandemic, and, you know, nationwide protests and riots. So like there was very real potential for unrest. Now I don't necessarily feel that. So I feel a little more calm. But still, you know, there could be still like isolated incidences, okay? Like again, like that's something that I've sort of been thinking about. Like if Trump wins or loses, there's a very real potential for myself or like other people of color, Black or Hispanic people, going about their day and then being harassed or assaulted by a Trump supporter. So it's like, in many respects, I feel like if he loses, that's going to agitate them more. Like that's just like, that's something that I really have to think about, you know. And right now I don't have any firearms, so like I don't feel the need to get one. But who knows what could unfold. Not that I can really afford one, because like at the best right now I can get like a handgun, which, I mean, who knows. So anyway, but yeah, I wanted to speak on Trump, and the possible implications, and like also different sort of reporting here, being written about him, because there's like the economic implications of Trump winning. And this is op-ed that I found on Washington Post, speaking on, that Trump could actually be bad, or he could be bad for the economy, which is funny. So like I actually saw like a little post from on Twitter about the CEO of BlackRock, and he's basically just coming out saying like, it doesn't matter who wins, we're the ones, the elites are going to win. So like, again, like that's just like little things here, but that's like the main concerns. Like, oh, Trump could, crash the economy, and there could be another depression. So we'll see here. So, right. So reading this Washington Post op-ed, a Trump victory would make America poor again. And then a subheader, if the GOP nominee's economic agenda is enacted, it could trigger a depression. And this is an op-ed by Eduardo Porter. So I'm going to read that here quickly. Right. So many Americans might find this counterintuitive, but the path to make America great again apparently involves shrinking the economy and lowering employment, raising prices across the board, and tanking the dollar. Foreign countries, which have so long abused the United States, will be punished by harvesting investment capital that would have otherwise landed here. Many of the proposals voiced by Trump on the campaign trail have been cast aside as probably meaningless. The offer to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, like the promises to exempt tips and Social Security payments from taxes or restore the state and local tax deductions, can be read as empty electoral pandering to Americans with car loans, restaurant workers, the elderly, you name it. There is, however, a core to Trump's worldview. It revolves around a belief that the United States, quote, has been ripped off for years, end quote, by the whole world, with the possible exception of Vladimir Putin's Russia and Viktor Orban's Hungary. Again, it's so funny how Trump has like this fixation with Orban. Viktor Orban, he likes me. He's a great guy. Like he sounds like Gru from Despicable Me. Like, it's just so funny how like he chooses those specific leaders. Again, like Hungary isn't even like a worthy trade partner. So like, what the fuck? Like it's just like that's nothing. Anyway, so just to not get sidetracked. But yeah, so not only do foreign exporters abuse U.S. markets, they empty their prisons and insane asylums to send millions upon the millions of criminal migrants America's way. Again, like he actually believes that, like, for whatever reason, that asylum, not like political asylum, like he really thinks that they're like mentally unwell people being released and coming across the border. That's what he thinks. And of course, it's being eaten up by, his followers. It's ridiculous. Right. The only appropriate response in the MAGA-verse is to punish foreign abusers and wall America off to protect it from future maltreatment. Two of Trump's promises, repeated endlessly with the emotional delivery that men tend to reserve for bar brawls, hew closely to this belief set. The vow to deport millions of immigrants and the plan to curtail the world's access to U.S. markets by raising tariffs against imports from China, mainly also those from everywhere else. These threats have been too casually lumped in with Trump's stream of implausible promises and statements, entangled in Trump's rhetorical weave. Unfortunately for us all, he threatens tariffs and deportations with the passion of a true believer. America, be afraid. Though each of these proposals alone could cause considerable damage to the economy, together they would conjure a perfect storm of self-inflicted harm. Kimberly Clausing, an economist at UCLA, put it calmly, quote, "It is not hyperbolic at all to say that this will cause a depression," end quote. How bad? 3 economists, Warwick McKibben of the Australian National University, along with Megan Hogan and Marcus Noland of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, fed Trump's proposals into a multi-country economic model that is often used by central banks, government agencies, and international institutions to assess scenarios and analyze policy. They plugged in the deportation of 8.3 million unauthorized workers, estimated to be toiling across the country. They added a 60% tariff imposed on Chinese imports and a 10% tariff on imports from all other countries. They added a third possible outcome that aligns well with Trump's deep-seated desire for absolute power, that he would end the political independence of the Federal Reserve to steer interest rates and dollars exchange rates to propel faster economic growth and terminate the nation's trade deficit. If Trump got all he asked for, the model said the outcome would be pretty bad. I just like that. This is an actual article, so I might look into that a bit. Pretty bad. Trump could claim a win. The current account deficit, the broadest measure of the nation's trade balance, would snap into a surplus, a longtime dream of the former presidents, but that would be wholly a product of capital fleeing the United States, starving the country's economy of resources to purchase imports. For everyday Americans, reality would become a nightmare. Trump's plan would shrink the nation's gross domestic product by $8 trillion over a second presidency in today's money. That is more than a quarter of the nation's economic output in 2024. At the end of the term, prices would be about 25% higher, employment would tank, the dollar would sink, apocalyptic stuff. It's just crazy. It's like, hey, liberal, watch this. And it's just like an economic apocalypse. Like, he's going to basically try to do like Milei. Like Milei has completely tanked Argentina's economy, and he's basically going to do that here. It's going to be crazy. I'm just going to be so interested. Like, if they actually manage to deport all, they say 8 million immigrants, undocumented migrants, who are they going to blame then? Like, okay, let's say if they actually manage to just, deport all the illegal immigrants, and they actually manage to stop anybody crossing the border, the economy's still going to go to shit. Who are they going to blame? It's going to be the left. The left who's in charge of all the food prices and the gas. It's just ridiculous, man. So continuing, what would have gone wrong? Standing annoyingly in the way of Trump's MAGA dream is math. Deporting 5% of the workforce would deliver a massive double whammy to the economy. It would boost inflation through rising wages, even as it slowed growth by curbing consumer spending. Immigrants are consumers. An investment as businesses with fewer workers to hire would invest less in themselves. This would ultimately cause deeper job losses. Deportation alone would knock $6.4 trillion off American output over Trump's term in office. According to the Economist model, the additional tariffs would deal a bedraggled economy yet another blow. They would directly boost inflation by raising the price of imports as well as that of the domestic goods that competed with them. But because the United States would need less foreign currency to pay for imports, the tariffs would also boost the US dollar, curbing US exports too. Other countries, moreover, would probably not take kindly to Trump's tariffs and retaliate with tariffs of their own, blocking US exports and further slowing economic growth in the United States. Finally, curbing the Fed's independence would deliver the coup de grace. If Trump pushed rates down to goose growth, GDP and employment might get a short-term boost, but that growth would soon be eaten up by higher inflation, and ominously, investors' mistrust of a Trump-led Fed would surely spur substantial capital growth. Maybe Trump can be prevented from doing some of this. Maybe he only manages to deport a couple million undocumented workers. Maybe he can't easily raise tariffs on countries with which the United States has trade agreements. Taking away the Fed's independence could get entangled in constitutional niceties. But one should not assume that Trump will be easily deterred. After struggling with grown-ups in his first administration, it is unlikely he will bring many into a second, and congressional Republicans looking to get in Trump's way will first have to find their spines. Perhaps the ultimate irony is that the red hat crowd that so reveres Trump will be punished the most by his plans. The MAGA contingent might think it's okay to burn down the House to stick it to the liberal elites that populate blue coastal America, but it's the homes of working class Americans that will burn first. Tariffs, for one, are particularly harmful to the poor, who consume most of what they earn with little left over for savings. The rich pay the tariff tax on a much smaller share of their income, and so the United States will have gotten back to the world, asserting its hegemony and making itself great again through an act of economic suicide. So, yeah, that is just... I mean, again, this is like a plan that would just funnel all the wealth to the top again, it's very interesting to see how the elites operate in this country, because it's sort of clear now that they're just trying to, like, they already know that the system is going to collapse, that the empire is going to collapse. So they're just trying to get as much money as possible before this whole show comes crashing down. They know that this is going to, fall apart eventually. So they're just going to make as much money as they can. And I guess Trump is sort of like, in a way, like an accelerationist. Like, I don't fucking know what his plan is. It's so ridiculous. Oh my god. Oh my god, dude. Again, deportations, tariffs. Like, they're talking about, like, oh, we're going to remove the income tax. Oh, you're going to get all your money. But then it's like, yeah, and then now that cost is going to be transferred into consumer goods. So, like, yeah, man. Again, they said it here, right? Like, immigrants are workers. Even undocumented immigrants, they're workers. And they're consumers. Like, it's ridiculous, man. Again, you actually try to, like, sit there and you try to explain, like, again, like, there's no logic to it. It's just like racist hysteria. Like, if you actually try to speak to somebody and, like, how exactly do immigrants cause a strain in the economy? Like, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Again, I'm a person who's, like, mainly done working class, low wage service positions, food service positions. And, like, I've never lost a job to an immigrant. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so if I'm somebody who has been, in this, like, labor field, physical labor, service labor field, and it's pretty clear that I'm not dealing with immigrants, nobody's taking my job. And then that's the thing too, because, like, the main people, especially in the Republican Party, they're petit bourgeois, like they're business owners, small business owners. So it's like, nobody's coming, no immigrants coming to take your job. And if anything, you're probably hiring undocumented workers because you can pay them cheap. It's just like, oh, I know a thing or two about the immigration crisis because I'm, a bit of a human trafficker myself. Like, yeah, that's just the way that they treat it. Anyway, so that's, just like an economic outlook, potentially. And they had this, like, yeah, because I was reading that article, and then they had, like, a sub-article. So I'm reading this article here. There's a quick paragraph. But yeah, the international economic implications of a second Trump presidency. Let me see here. Oh, so there's a whole paper here. Okay, well, I'm not going to read this whole paper. Okay, this is a pretty extensive report, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is just a quick abstract of the paper. So this paper explores policies promoted by former president and now candidate Donald Trump that would potentially affect the global economy. We focus on immigration policy, trade, and erosion of the Federal Reserve Board's political independence. Each policy has differing macroeconomic and sectoral impacts on the United States and other countries. We find, however, that all the policies examined cause a decline in U.S. production and employment, especially in trade-exposed sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture, as well as higher U.S. inflation. The trade policies do little to improve the U.S. trade balance. However, the erosion of Fed independence does so by causing capital outflows, a significant depreciation of the dollar, and higher unemployment toward the end of 2028, which worsen American living standards. Scenarios combining individual policies show that the changes cause a large inflationary impulse and a significant loss of employment, particularly in manufacturing and agriculture in the U.S. economy. The negative impact of a contraction in global trade is significant for countries that trade with the United States the most. The adverse effect is offset for some economies by the positive effects of an inflow of foreign capital that would otherwise have gone into the U.S. economy. An online dashboard contains a full set of macroeconomic sectoral results for all countries. Okay, I'm actually going to go onto this dashboard and see what other items they have here. So let me see here. Oh, wow. Okay, so they have different projections here. So I'm looking here at macroeconomic projections. Scenario 1, deportations of 1.3 million immigrant workers. And this is a time range from 2024 to 2035. So on the x-axis, they show the years, and then the y-axis, deviation from the baseline. Yeah, projected variation and real GDP from baseline. So from 2024, the US is at 0. So yeah, it's all the deviations, right? So from 2024 to 2025, there's a deviation of negative 0.19. So from 2028, it then goes to negative 1.19. So it's a pretty significant decline in GDP, and that's just 1.3 million. Let's take it to 8.3. So right. So it's from 2024 to 2025, 1.22 deviation, and 2028 is 7.44, negative 7.44. So that's the deviation in real GDP. Wow, crazy. And then of course they have other countries here, which like they show pretty stable actually. So you would think, if the United States economy goes to shit, that the rest of the world would follow, but everybody else seems pretty okay. Let me see a little further. So 10% U.S. tariff on all countries without retaliation. Ooh, okay, that's a bit different. Okay, so right, so at 2026, the deviation, and this is from U.S. tariffs on all country, and this is without retaliation. Okay, so at 2026, the deviation is negative 0.36, and in 2028 is negative 0.26. And that's U.S. GDP. A 10% U.S. tariff on all countries with retaliation. So United States, 2025, negative 0.35. 2028 is negative 0.68. And actually, like, it kind of troughs out. So, like, it goes down to negative 0.88 in 2026. And then it comes up to negative 0.68. And that's, 10% U.S. tariffs on all countries with retaliation. So the next scenario, 60% U.S. tariff on China without retaliation. Oof, my goodness. So this is without retaliation, 60% tariffs on China. So China's GDP from 2024 to 2025 is negative 0.88. And at 2028 is negative 0.89. All right. And then 60% U.S. tariffs on China with retaliation. Actually, let me go back. It's because U.S. economy, let me see again. Again, so without retaliation, U.S. economy doesn't really change. So 2026, negative 0.14. 2028, negative 0.19. Okay, so 60% tariffs with retaliation. And in China, at 2025 goes to negative 0.81. 2028 is negative 1.16. That's China GDP. The US at 2025 goes to negative 0.01. Sorry, negative 0.07. 2025. At 2028, negative 0.37. So that's the deviation of GDP. Let's see here. Eroding the independence of the Federal Reserve. So here they show GDP growth in the first year, 2025, 1.09. And they did say, it would be a short-term boost. And then at 2028, and again, this is eroding the independence of the Federal Reserve, 2028, decline to negative 1.2. You actually see something. For some reason, they have Turkey like boosting really heavily. Damn. So let me see about China. Where's China? Okay, well, China's sort of balanced, but yeah. So then here, so now they have the combined policies. So all of the deportations and tariffs and Federal Reserves. So now they've projected this, combined that together, and this is like the low estimate. And again, I know I'm going over a lot of numbers, but again, this is just, so you get an idea. So combined policies low. They show, again, short-term boost 2025 of 0.80 GDP growth, but then at 2028, decline to negative 0.281. Yeah, decline to negative 2.81. So that's the low estimate. And then high estimate, they don't even show a boost. They show 2025 decline of 0.53. And then at 2028, they show a decline of negative 9.65. And that's the higher estimate. So again, that's just the data sets that they've showed. There's a lot of numbers here. If you really want to get a better idea, it's the international economic implications of the Trump program. You can have a look there. Let me see. Okay, now I'm looking at like sectoral. Okay, because this is going to different segments, but yeah, they have agriculture, they have energy, mining, so different sectors there. But yeah, not a good sign if they follow through with everything. Yeah, really bad for the economy. Which, I mean, again, it's just so fascinating. Especially his followers, the Trump followers. The only conception of politics is like retribution and like we're gonna deport them, the immigrants. We're gonna get back at the liberals, So for them, like, it doesn't really matter even if there is an economic suicide, so long as their political enemies are hurt, which is crazy. And then what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen is if the economy goes to shit, and we end up in some sort of collapse apocalypse, yeah, man. I mean, they're just going to become more reactionary and hardline, and dude, it's not a good sign. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so that's fun. That's, and again, like, I'm not necessarily like big on like, I talk about economics and trade, but again, there's like, a lot of statistics and math behind it. So not an expert, just, reporting the findings here. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just crazy. Again, like, I'm thinking back on like, what's it called? I'm thinking back on like the different details that I've read about the migrant labor before this like hysteria really hit the political mainstream. And like what used to be the case was that immigrants would come to America or across the border from America. It was seasonal. They would just come over, do some work, and then they'd go back home. Like that was just the way it used to be, and we could have it that way, like people come here to America to work, it's ridiculous. And I'm not saying that there isn't like a border problem, that there isn't like cartel issues. Like, again, the cartel is a very real problem. I'm not saying that it isn't a security risk, but like all these people crossing the border, they're not like cartel operatives, it's an invasion. The cartel is invading America. Like, that's not happening. And again, like, and this is the thing, like, that I've sort of like, really like thought about, is that like stuff like the cartel, which they're gonna, end up like they're gonna start calling them terrorists eventually, cartels and terrorism, like the whole drug trade and such. Like a lot of these like, intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies, like they need them to stay in power. Like they need those groups to stay in power because then it justifies their position and their funding. So it's like they don't actually want to fix this. They don't actually want to like defeat the cartel, and they want to constantly have this crisis at the border so they can justify the security buildup. Same thing with like Greg Abbott, like he's basically like there's like a whole town, like I think Eagle Pass, that's like basically like under like a National Guard occupation. Like it's really ridiculous, and like there's very real constitutional like dilemmas here. But yeah, man, like they're just trying to treat it. It's like it wasn't a problem, but now that we're creating this security like situation, now it's starting to become a problem. It's like, anyway, it's like it's so self-manufactured. Anyway, it's not real. And then of course you have the Democrats now trying to like position themselves as like, oh well, we're also tough on the border. We also hate the cartels. We don't want these Mexicans crossing over, Yeah, we'll also deport, immigrants. Like, that's just like basically what the Democrats are doing. They're talking about the kids in cages. You don't hear about that at all now. Like it's still going on. Like they're talking about like deportations, but it's like, Biden has also deported quite a bit of people. It's just like, it's crazy. Like there's no way to satisfy them. It's like, again, you had Greg Abbott basically like foment like an insurrection. Again, people always try to like move past that, but it's like he almost started an insurrection over like the border security and like the jurisdiction of federal agents. And like, dude, like it's ridiculous, man. Like, again, like this is like the line in the sand that's being drawn, where it's like you have like a lot of red states talking about like we support Texas's right to defend their borders, and it, like, again, this is just ridiculous what's happening. And I mean, this is just the signs of our reactionary trend that's happening, where obviously the economic prospects are declining and becoming less favorable for the working people. And instead of blaming the actual people who are in charge, who actually own all the land and all the properties, who own all the capital, right? Instead of blaming them, they're going to blame immigrants. And Democrats are totally willing to let that happen. Again, like this is just, what's the slide that we're heading towards. And you can see even like, yeah, so here, and again, you can see even with like liberals, like there's a lot of animosity that's happening towards people of color, because especially in regards to this Gaza genocide, because we're, saying pretty openly like, hey, like, if Kamala Harris isn't going to stop this, then you don't really have our support. And you're just getting annoyed by that. And then, of course, you can see that there's like sort of that, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, you can already kind of tell that they're going to, seek retribution against those who didn't follow Kamala Harris. Like, that's sort of like what liberals are kind of turning into. So, I did want to speak on here this USA Today article. And their report on the proposed mass deportations and the economic implications of that. I mean, of course, I kind of went over, these projections, but this is more specifically on the deportations and, like, again, like, how are you going to deport millions of people? Like, it would basically, like, you would have to have a surveillance state that's like that, like, you see all like the dystopian, like hysteria over like China and their surveillance state. Oh, you see, because they have social credit and they have face scanners and all that. It's like, well, that's like what would need to happen here in America to like hunt down people, because like nobody walks around like I'm an illegal immigrant. Like nobody says that. So it's going to just turn into like a surveillance state. And of course, you're going to have people of color primarily being targeted. And that's a very real thing that I'm going to have to be worried about. If they start implementing like policies where like cops can ask for your ID and your passport, it's like, that's a real thing that can happen now. And again, it's scary. So I understand that Trump is a real threat for that. But like, I could just as easily see this happening under Kamala Harris. Like, truly, like it's not going to be that long until you have Democrats saying the same things. Like again, this is just, they're two sides of the same coin. It's like, well, we're pro-abortion, we're pro-gay, but yes, we will mass deport immigrants. Like that's what Democrats are going to start turning into, because they want to appeal to the right more. Anyway, so I'm just reading from USA Today. So this is for Trump. In the article here, Donald Trump has promised a mass deportation and it will cost billions. And this is an article written by Laura Villagran, Bart Jansen, and Aisha Bagchi. So just reading here. If he returns to the White House, Donald Trump has vowed to launch a, quote, mass deportation of at least 11 million immigrants living in the United States without authorization. He made a similar promise during his first administration. It didn't pan out after he hit logistical and legal obstacles. This time, experts say things may be different. A second, more experienced Trump administration will know, quote, how to effectively use an enormous bureaucracy to their advantage, end quote, said Cesar Garcia Hernandez, an Ohio State University law professor and author of, quote, Migrating to Prison, America's Obsession with Locking Up Immigrants, end quote. There will be fewer legal obstacles too. Trump appointed hundreds of judges during his first term, reshaping the courts that previously slowed or stopped his attempts to ramp up immigration enforcement. The ramp up is doable if a second Trump administration takes a, quote, steroid-infused whole-of-government approach, end quote, said Mark Morgan, who served as acting commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection under Trump. Quote, the priorities will stay the same, going after convicted criminals, end quote, Morgan said. Quote, however, nobody's off limits, end quote. And again, it's like convicted criminals, but it's like, they say convicted criminals, but then if you create a crime, like, again, they're, we're all going to go after convicted criminals, but then it's going to be the case of like, how do I say this? Because again, I'm not too familiar with like the immigration process and like the different visa. Like they could just like revoke people's visa status and then now you're a criminal, like that's, yeah. Again, they can just say there's a new crime and then now like hundreds or millions of people are now criminals, So again, that's just the way that I perceive it. Right. And if Trump wins his second term, experts say, public opinion may be on his side to do things Americans objected to before, like separating immigrant parents from their children in order to prosecute the adults. A new USA Today Suffolk University poll found 45% of respondents support Trump's mass deportation proposal and 49% oppose it, with 4% undecided. The poll of 1,000 likely voters taken by landline and cell phone, October 14th to 18th, has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.1 percentage points. Trump hasn't released detailed plans for a mass deportation, but a USA Today review of interviews and speeches by Trump and his former advisors and administrators indicates he intends to, and these are the different points, use emergency and executive authorities to bypass existing laws, which includes protections for immigrants, activates provisions under a law from the 1700s called the Alien Enemies Act, which was used to detain people of Japanese, German, and Italian descent in World War II, rely on local and state police, especially in like-minded Republican districts, to find and arrest immigrants in the country without permission, employ the U.S. military, National Guard, in military enforcement, and redirect federal employees and resources to support the effort. A mass deportation of 1 million people per year could cost $88 billion annually, according to the nonpartisan American Immigration Council. It will require an unprecedented ramp-up of law enforcement staffing, detention capacity, immigration courtrooms, and flight capacity. Quote, if President Trump gets reelected, the border is going to be sealed, the military will be deployed, the National Guard will be activated, and the illegals are going home, said Stephen Miller, a former advisor and architect of Trump's previous immigration policies, told a conservative podcast host earlier this year. So now here, who would Trump deport? Pew Research estimates there are 11 million immigrants in the United States without authorization. The vast majority don't have a criminal conviction, and their individual situations can vary dramatically, from the asylum seekers who crossed the border to people who flew in on a tourist visa and overstayed. Again, it's like they're here without authorization, so yeah, they're technically criminals, so that's what they mean. Oh, we're only going after convicted criminals, and it's usually just people who like overstayed a visa, So anyway. So among them are some 1.3 million immigrants who have already been issued removal orders but remain in the country, said Kathleen Bush Joseph, a policy analyst at the Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute. Quote, that's partly due to a lack of immigration and custom enforcement officers, a lack of airplane capacity, and the fact that some countries won't take people back, end quote, she said. People with existing removal orders could be targeted first, as could the hundreds of thousands of immigrants who are in jail on state or local criminal charges, as said Stephen Camarota, director of research for the Center of Immigration Studies. Quote, this is the low-hanging fruit, end quote, he said, quote, all the people who get picked up under the Secure Communities, end quote, a program that connected under the Obama administration local law enforcement jurisdictions with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement database. ICE reported that in July, that there were more than 660,000 non-citizens with criminal histories on its docket. Of the 11 million, more than half are people who came legally but overstayed their visas, according to the Center for Migration Studies. Others crossed the border illegally years ago. They may have married U.S. citizens and may have also U.S. citizen children and could be eligible at some point for legal status. There are also hundreds of thousands of beneficiaries of temporary programs that could disappear with the stroke of a presidential pen. Quote, on a practical level, Garcia Hernandez said, the Trump camp, quote, seems intent on expanding the pool of people who they target for potential removal from the United States to millions of people, including people who have the federal government's permission to be in the United States, end quote. More than 860,000 people from 16 different countries such as Afghanistan, Ukraine, Syria, Venezuela, and Haiti benefit from temporary protected status, end quote. According to the National Immigration Forum, that program can be canceled by Homeland Security at any time. Another 530,000 immigrants who arrived as children when their parents crossed the border illegally benefit from a temporary status called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA. According to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Trump tried to abolish the program, which began under the Obama administration, but the Supreme Court, which was then more liberal, blocked him. Another 1.6 million asylum seekers are awaiting hearings in their cases, according to the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse. According to the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse at Syracuse University. Quote, these are not people who have snuck into the country, end quote, said Mario Russell, executive director of the Center for Migration Studies. Quote, they are people who have been given permission to have their cases heard, end quote. And then this continuing paragraphs. So dragnet operations, how the government would find immigrants to the port. The immediate challenge to a mass deportation would be identifying and locating the millions of immigrants here without legal status who aren't on the government's rosters. Trump has said state and local law enforcement officers could help federal authorities. The federal government, quote, can tap into greater intelligence community to put together targeting packages, end quote. Morgan said that effort would likely be led by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's National Targeting Center. Homeland Security agencies, including the FBI and U.S. Marshals, could participate, he said. Quote, I think you will see NTC be the hub receiving intelligence from different agencies, end quote. Morgan said, quote, state and local are an integral part of that, end quote. If that collaboration were to happen, Russell said that he expects it would lead to, quote, catastrophic civil rights violations, quote, end quote, based on poor evidence, poor forensics, and poor profiling. The investigations would lead to knocks on doors on people's homes and raids on workplaces. He said, essentially a dragnet operation. So again, there's going to be a lot of stories that you're going to read now. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stories that are going to come out. And they happened under the first administration. There were American citizens who were detained, and that just got quietly swept under the rug. But now, of course, they're saying there's a very real potential for sort of mass surveillance, right? And just like basically like stop and frisk, like if you meet the, profile that, and they're talking about getting local cops involved. It's like, dude, that's just like the worst thing you could do. And yeah, what's going to end up happening also, they're going to like open like hotlines, like watch. They're going to be like, oh, this is a tip line. If you know somebody's an immigrant, you can put their information in this line. And that's just going to lead to false reporting. This is what happens in fascist systems and reactionary, declines. Like there's going to be like mass surveillance and people reporting and snitching on each other. This is a dangerous sign. And again, of course, under Trump, we're seeing, because like Trump is known as like being anti-immigrant. But as I said, Democrats, if the years go on, they could really take this up as well, because like they've been making a rightward shift, and as you've seen with the border, Kamala Harris is trying to appeal with that as well. So yeah, even under Obama and Biden, there's been like pretty heavy like deportations. So like, yeah, man, like they're not even serious about that either. Yeah. Anyway, this is a pretty lengthy article. I'm trying to see if there's any more that I can read here. Let me read. Okay, I want to go over here towards the end. Okay, so how would Trump detain people awaiting deportation? To put the scale of an operation to deport 11 million people into context, there were 1.2 million prisoners held in all of the country's state and federal prisons in 2022, according to the Federal Bureau of Justice Statistics. Immigration detention has historically been done on a much smaller scale. Congress currently appropriates funding enough for ICE to hold an average of 34,000 people in detention daily. ICE uses more than 190 facilities to detain immigrants in at least 40 states and U.S. territories, according to agency statistics. Trump has said he wouldn't need large detention centers because the deportations would happen swiftly, but many immigrants have a right to plead their case to stay. But there's already a backlog of 3.5 million cases in the immigration court system. It could take months or years to get a hearing. Likewise, foreign governments must agree to accept deportees. Those negotiations can take time or fail. Some countries, including China and Venezuela, have in the past refused to take back their citizens. The American Immigration Council estimates the country would have to maintain 1,000 new immigration courtrooms and expand ICE's detention capacity 24-fold to house all the people awaiting hearings. Okay? And again, that's the thing too, because you're going to detain 11 million people, but you have to feed them, you have to clothe them, you have to give them amenities. You can't just lock people in a cage. This is going to be such a drain. But again, it's not. It has nothing to do with the economic, the obvious economic consequences. It's just they want to hurt people. That's just what they want. It's ridiculous. Right. So here, now they're talking about the Aliens Act. Old law, new application, the Alien Enemies Act. Trump said that he would invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to hasten deportations. The Republican Party embraced Trump's plan in its platform, citing the law to justify removing known or suspected immigrant gang members, drug dealers, or cartel members under the premise that their presence amounts to an invasion by a foreign government. The courts could reject giving the president what are arguably only wartime powers over migration. However, courts have sometimes refused to second-guess a presidential administration's judgment about what constitutes an invasion, or held that presidents have the final say. Catherine E. Bright, a lawyer who studies war powers at the Brennan Center for Justice, said the Aliens Enemies Act is based on identity as a foreign citizen, not conduct or legal status. Quote, it doesn't matter as long as you have that birth heritage or citizenship of the so-called foreign belligerent, end quote, E. Bright said. Trump has also promised to employ the National Guard and the military in his effort. Both Democrat and Republican administrators have used the National Guard to support border enforcement missions, but it would take invoking the Insurrection Act to put soldiers to work rounding up immigrants nationwide, experts say. There is another potential role for the military, said Morgan, in the logistics of detention. Military installations around the country could provide space for detaining immigrants, particularly nonviolent offenders and families, he said. Quote, we detain them in family residential centers with all the medical care and amenities. As we're going through the removal process to remove them to their country as a family, Morgan said, quote, the military can help with those kinds of facilities, end quote. And then here's a brief history of deportation efforts. Because again, this isn't the first time they tried to do stuff like this. So yeah. So Trump has frequently said that he would model his deportation effort after an operation 70 years ago under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower's 1954 effort targeted hundreds of thousands of Mexicans and people of Mexican descent. It relied heavily on state and local law enforcement and resulted in a dragnet that rounded up and expelled U.S. citizens along with migrants. But no president has ever tallied more deportations than President Barack Obama, who at the peak in 2012 removed more than 407,000 people, according to Track. In total, his 8-year administration logged more than 3.1 million ICE deportations. Trump's highest year of deportations was 2019, when his administration deported more than 269,000 people, according to the same Track data set. Across all 4 years of Trump's administration, ICE reported just under 932,000 deportations. So yeah, I mean, that's just the thing that I've seen where it's you have Republicans being oh, well, the Democrats, they're leftists and they're small, they love the immigrants and they're letting them invade, and then the Democrats are just nuh-uh, I'm going to deport people also. And then of course you saw by Obama making record deportations. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't really stand for anything. yeah, it's I who knows, man. It's just I don't even know what to say, because like, again, obviously I live in Texas and I live in a small town, and I don't really worry about like dealing with harassment or any sort of like comments. I was scared again in 2020, but that was just largely due to the broader unrest and instability with the pandemic and the economic shutdown. So there was like very real potential for unrest. So now I'm not so worried. But then again, it just takes one idiot to just look at me and be like, I think he's illegal. Are you illegal? Like, it takes one guy, Anyway, it's crazy. Crazy. And again, this isn't even the end of it. I'm going to speak a little more now on Trump, because there's the mass deportation. And then here we have the threats of retribution, right? Because, he's a pretty vindictive guy. He's very petty. So it's a pretty lengthy article here from NPR. So I'll try to read, as much as I can. But yeah, we'll get here. So this is from NPR, and this is from Tom Dreisbach. I hope I'm saying that right. And this is the title here. Trump has made more than 100 threats to prosecute or punish perceived enemies. So this is here, an article from NPR. So with just 2 weeks remaining until the presidential election, former President Donald Trump has used his most recent appearances on podcasts and cable interviews to escalate attacks on fellow Americans, whom he calls, quote, the enemy from within. In one recent interview, Trump has said that if radical left lunatics disrupt the election, that it would be very easily handled by, if necessary, the National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, end quote. That statement on Fox News was not the first time Trump has expressed support for using government force against domestic political rivals since 2022, when he began preparing for the presidential campaign. Trump has issued more than 100 threats to investigate, prosecute, imprison, or otherwise punish his perceived opponents, NPR has found. A review of Trump's rally speeches, press conferences, interviews, and social media posts shows that the former president has repeatedly indicated that he would use federal law enforcement as part of a campaign to exact retribution. Vice President Kamala Harris, quote, should be impeached and prosecuted, end quote, Trump said at a rally last month. Quote, I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family, end quote, Trump said last year. And then this is another one. So, quote, Elizabeth Line Cheney is guilty of treason, end quote, read one post Trump reposted on his social media, Truth Social. And this is all caps. So he said that in all caps regarding the former Republican Congresswoman, quote, Retruth is what you wanted televised. Oh, Retruth, because that's like the repost on Truth Social. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't even know about this. Okay. So, yeah, all caps, quote, Retruth if you want televised military tribunals, end quote. I'm sorry if I do the voice. I can't help it. It's so good. Anyway, and this is another screen cap that they have from Truth Social. That's so funny. They call it a Retruth. I had no idea. Anyway, right. So this is another post from Donald Trump. She should go to jail along with the rest of the unselect committee. Anyway, right. So journalists who declined to identify the source of leaked information would also face imprisonment, Trump said. Quote, if the reporter doesn't want to tell you, it's bye-bye. The reporter goes to jail. I'm sorry. I'm so mature. End quote. Trump said in 2022, he appeared to suggest that the reporter could also face sexual assault while in custody. What the fuck, dude? Trump and his allies have either downplayed these threats or said that these actions would be justified in part because of the 4 criminal prosecutions brought against Trump since he left office. In one of those cases, a New York jury found Trump guilty of 34 felony counts in connection with the hush money he paid to keep an alleged affair with adult film star actress Stormy Daniels secret. He is appealing that verdict. When right-wing radio host Glenn Beck asked Trump if he would lock up his opponents in a second term, Trump responded, quote, "The answer is you have no choice because they're doing it to us," end quote. Legal experts said that there are few guardrails preventing Trump from pursuing his plans to prosecute opponents, and noted that Trump pressured the Department of Justice to investigate rivals during his first term. In about a dozen cases, the Justice Department followed through and initiated investigations, according to one analysis. If Trump follows through on his stated plans in his second term, these experts said his actions could endanger American civil liberties and cause a chilling effect on criticism of the president. The threats he's made have already led some of his targets to prepare for the worst by saving money and considering whether to leave the country if Trump wins the election. Quote, "This is how autocrats cement their permanent grip on power," end quote, said Ian Bassin, the executive director of the nonprofit group Protect Democracy, which advocates for protections against authoritarianism. Many of Trump's threats relate to his persistent false claims about election fraud and the lie that he won the 2020 election. So this is another post from all caps by Trump. Quote, "Start arresting the poll workers and watch how fast they tell you who told them to cheat," end quote, reads a message Trump reposted on Truth Social in 2023. He has also repeatedly targeted the prosecutors, judges, and even courtroom staff connected to the prosecutions against him for alleged election interference, improperly holding classified documents, and business fraud. New York Attorney General Letitia James and Judge Arthur Engoron, quote, "should be arrested and punished accordingly," Trump said at a rally in January. James successfully brought a civil fraud case against Trump, which Engoron presided over. Trump is appealing the judgment against him. He also reposted a message attacking a member of the Georgia grand jury that indicted him. And this is another screen cap from Truth Social. And I'm sorry that I'm doing the impressions, but I just can't help myself. We try to have some fun here, okay? So, all right, so the Truth Social here. "Judge Engoron should end the ridiculous political witch hunt against me. I have totally won this case, which should have never been brought. The only fraud was committed by AG Letitia James in convincing the judge that Mar-a-Lago was only worth $18 million in order to make his numbers look bad, but when it is worth 50 to 100 times that amount. She campaigned on getting Trump. She should be prosecuted." Oh my God, dude, I'm sorry. It's 18 million. It's easily 50 to 100 times more than that, sweetheart. Okay. I'm sorry. Right, so among the other targets of Trump's threats are former President Barack Obama, members of the U.S. Capitol Police who defended the Capitol during the January 6th riot, members of the January 6th Select Committee in Congress, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, people who criticized the Supreme Court, and protesters who burned the American flag. So again, he's just a wide net here of political enemies. Yeah, in one instance, Trump suggested that General Mark Milley, who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in his administration, could face execution for calling officials in China to try and diffuse tensions in the chaotic aftermath of the January 6th attack. Quote, "This is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death," end quote, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Milley, who retired in 2023, has since told journalist Bob Woodward that Trump is a fascist to the core and the most dangerous person in this country. And this is another screen cap by Trump talking about Mark Milley. "Mark Milley, who led perhaps the most embarrassing moment in American history with his grossly incompetent implementation of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, costing many lives, leaving behind hundreds of American citizens and handing over billions of dollars of the finest military equipment ever made, will be leaving the military next week. This will be a time for all citizens of the USA to celebrate. This guy turned out to be a woke train wreck who, if the fake news reporting is correct, was actually dealing with China to give them a heads up on the thinking of the United States president. This is an act so egregious that in times gone by, the punishment would have been death. A war between China and the United States could have resulted from such a treasonous act. To be continued. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I have to do this. In addition to using the powers under criminal law, Trump has also promised to take greater control of agencies like the Federal Communications Commission, which regulates broadcast television and radio, including NPR's network of member stations. After his presidential debate against Harris on ABC News, Trump called for the FCC to revoke ABC's broadcast license due to his perception of the moderator's bias. He also called for an investigation of CBS News for campaign finance violations after an interview with Vice President Harris. He previously floated pulling the license for NBC as well over criticism of its news coverage. Quote, I absolutely think he will follow up on those threats, said Stephanie Grisham, who worked with Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and served as his White House press secretary. Grisham resigned in the aftermath of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol and has since become a vocal critic of her former boss. Quote, I just know that once he's in office with no guardrails, no reason to worry about re-election, and only the most fervent, loyal people surrounding him, Grisham said, quote, he will absolutely make sure his enemies pay for what he perceives to be their crimes, end quote. John Bolton, who served as National Security Advisor in the Trump White House, said at an event earlier this year that he believed Trump would use the Department of Justice to enact, quote, a retribution presidency. In response to NPR's reporting, the Republican National Committee issued a statement, quote, Kamala Harris is the threat to democracy, end quote, said RNC spokesperson Anna Kelly. Quote, she and Joe Biden weaponize our justice system in order to sway an election, end quote. Again, this is where like the lawfare like mentality or like sort of terminology has come about, which is like, which is crazy because it's like, oh, it's lawfare. It's like, no, man, like he committed a crime. That's what the law is. Anyway, now I'm just going to go over here because they have certain comments that he's made. I mean, they're saying like since 2022, he's made at least 109 threats. So here are at least some comments that he's made. And again, I'm still going to do the voice. We love the voice, don't we, folks? Like, I'm still going to do it because it's a lot of fun. And this is, sometimes you got to laugh at him, So, right. So here is a comment that he made targeting election workers. Oh, I think I read that comment earlier. Okay, so here's another one about about Democratic district attorneys. Quote, I will direct a completely overhauled DOJ to investigate every radical, out-of-control prosecutor in America for their illegal racist enforcement of the law. End quote. I don't know what he means by racist enforcement. Is he saying that they're being racial towards him? Who knows? Here, well, he made two comments against Jamal Bowman. So I'm going to read the first one. Quote, will Congressman Jamal Bowman be prosecuted and imprisoned for very dangerously pulling and setting... Oh, the fire alarm incident. Oh my God, this is so stupid. Okay, quote, will Congressman Jamal Bowman be prosecuted and imprisoned for very dangerously pulling and setting off the main fire alarm system in order to stop a congressional vote that was going to happen in D.C.? His egregious act is covered on tape, a horrible display of nerve and criminality. It was very dangerous. Instruction of an official proceeding, the same as used against our J6 prisoners. Actually, his act may be even worse. This is all caps. He must suffer their same fate. When will his trial begin? Oh my God. And then another one from Jamal Bowman. Yeah, the fire alarm incident was so funny because they really fucking lost it. Right. Trump. Okay. So yeah, Trump posted 100% correct in response to his statement that Representative Jamal Bowman should be charged with a felony. So that's another. Yeah, he just wanted him to go to jail. And then here he's talking about Biden, and this is another from a political rally. Quote, I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president of the history of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. Name a special prosecutor. And the audience chanting, lock him up. And Trump, and all others involved with the destruction of our elections, our borders, and our country itself. End quote. So, right. So that's, again, that was just being stupid. But these are comments he's making on social media, and the comments he's making at political rallies, Klan rallies, really. Yeah. And there's a much more to highlight here, but I just wanted to go over certain comments here. Let me go towards the end. So this is like the final paragraph. This is the final article here, preparing for the worst. So Trump continues to threaten McCabe, and this is Andrew McCabe, who was the former deputy director of the FBI. Right. And he was tied in with the Comey testimony. So right here, Steve Bannon, who served as Trump's chief strategist in the White House and remains a prominent supporter, said on his podcast that McCabe, quote, should be worried, end quote, that Trump would go after him if he returns to the White House. Quote, you should be very worried, end quote, Bannon said, quote, but also understand this, brother. We have extradition treaties with virtually every country in the world, and you go ahead and run as far as you want. We're going to come and get you, end quote. Bannon is currently serving a 4-month sentence for contempt of Congress and is due to be released at the end of October. Yeah, Trump reposted Bannon's comments on Truth Social. Quote, it shows you, I think, in serious terms, a persistent commitment to this idea of we're going to go on the revenge tour, end quote, McCabe said in response to these comments. McCabe said that he has had difficult conversations with his family about what Trump might do if he returns to the White House, and he knows other former officials who are also contemplating leaving the country. Quote, I don't intend to leave the country that I served for 21 years, end quote, McCabe said. Quote, but this kind of pits you against your children and your spouses who just want to be safe, end quote. Grisham says she's also making preparations in case Trump returns to the White House and saving up money. Trump has not threatened her with jail time or prosecution, but did attack her in personal terms after she published a book critical of the administration. Quote, I'm definitely fearful for myself and for many of my friends who have spoken out too, Grisham said. It's a terrifying thought because that is literally the most powerful person in the world that knows you and wants only bad for you. It's truly a terrifying thought. Let me make sure I properly identify Grisham. Okay, Stephanie Grisham. But yeah, she was press secretary. So right. Yeah. So that's just, again, different cabinet members who are, speaking out, and then, there's a real fear of retribution. So very real potential for that. That was a pretty lengthy article though. And I know I did, I kind of overindulged on the impersonation, so I won't be doing that anymore. But yeah, that was just the real threats of Trump and his retribution against those who wronged him. And I also spoke about the deportations and the real consequences of that. So again, I'm not doubting that, like, if Trump wins, that there's very real danger that's going to unfold. I'm just upset at the Democrats for putting us in this position where it's like, well, it's either us or them, like that's just, which again, it's not really like this idea of like, oh, well, you see, because like if the Democrats are like the real allies, but like there's not really, how do I say this? It doesn't really help like marginalized people to be putting us in this position of like, well, it's either me or the guy who's going to kill you, like that's not really. And then also at the same time saying, oh, well, at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to like fix anything in your life. Like, I'm just going to continue the same system. But, at least I'm not going to try to kill you immediately. It's ridiculous. But I don't know, man. I just, again, just in general, feel disillusioned about Kamala Harris and our just political system in general. And, it's kind of interesting because, when Trump was first elected, I was truly scared because, I'm 20 years old and this is like my first election. And, I was still more like on that liberal phase of my life, I was just hearing about Bernie Sanders. So like I was kind of on board with him. But, yeah, man, like how do I say this? Because I mean, like now, like I'm not as afraid. I mean, I'm still worried, obviously, but I guess I'm just like more accustomed to that fear. I don't know how to describe it. Like I'm not like panicking and thinking that like the world's ending. Well, I mean, it is ending, but like I'm not saying like, oh, the sky is falling, as much. And also the fact that like I'm totally calm about not voting for Kamala Harris. Like I'm not as moved by it. Anyway, I don't even know. So I'm gonna read this last article. This is from NPR again, and they're talking about Trump and Harris, and just sort of like the closing messages, as the election is starting to wrap up. And they're saying here, Trump and Harris's closing messages to Republicans are as different as they come. So, yeah, I mean, again, they're both trying to appeal to Republicans. So, we'll see here. And this is this is to deal with North Carolina, which I'm thinking this is going to be tied to like the Hurricane Helene response, because there's also been some electoral controversies surrounding that. So, yeah, we'll read here for a moment. So, right. So this is from Stephen Fowler, NPR. So here, from Greenville, North Carolina. With just over 2 weeks to go until voting closes on Election Day, Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump spent Monday campaigning in swing states focused on a voting bloc to victory Republicans. In North Carolina, Trump touted early voting numbers while touring storm damage near Asheville, railed against Harris while promoting hardline immigration policies at a rally in Greenville, and courted evangelical voters at a faith-focused event just outside Charlotte. Quote, "As I look back at my life's journey and events, I now recognize that it's been the hand of God leading me to where I am today," Trump said in an event. Again, I want to stop with the voice because, anyway. Trump said at an event with faith leaders in Concord, quote, "And my faith took on a new meaning on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was knocked to the ground essentially by what seemed like a supernatural hand." Okay, hold on. Now I have to do the voice. Okay. "And my faith took a new meaning on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, where I was knocked to the ground essentially by what seemed like a supernatural hand. And I would like to think that God saved me for that purpose, and that's to make our country greater." Okay, I just had to do it because it's just too funny. Okay, again, that's so funny. It's like I almost died, and that reconnected me with God. Anyway, it's like, don't you think like if God was really guiding you, that He wouldn't put somebody on the roof to shoot you? I mean, anyway, that's just He works in mysterious ways. God is great. Anyway, so here, meanwhile, Harris held several moderated town hall style discussions with former GOP Congresswoman Liz Cheney in the suburbs of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, where the vice president framed the election as a choice on the future of democracy where the stakes rise above partisan labels. Quote, "I have said before," should I do a Kamala Harris voice? Well, let me see if I can do an impression. "I have said before that it must be repeated each time, that there are moments in history of our country which challenge us, each of us, to really decide." Yes. Okay, I'm not going to do it. Anyway. Harris said in Malvern, Pennsylvania, quote, "Do we stand for those things that we talk about, including in particular country over party," end quote. Yeah, that was the whole rally. It's like country over party, with Liz Cheney and getting an endorsement from Dick Cheney, easily one of the worst political figures, one of the most evil, competently evil political figures of recent American history, recent politics. Like when he eventually dies, you're going to see a lot of Democrats being like, "Oh, well, he was such a strong leader," and it's just like, God, this motherfucker, man, Jesus. Okay, yeah. So throughout the 2024 presidential campaign, Trump has made little effort to moderate his message beyond his base within the Republican Party, and has instead sought to grow that base by turning out lower propensity voters receptive to his message and disillusioned by the current Democratic administration. The coalition that powered President Biden's narrow victory, included a sizable number of anti-Trump conservatives and right-leaning independents who backed his campaign but otherwise support Republicans. After taking over as Democratic nominee this summer, Harris has ramped up efforts to campaign across the aisle and expand the party's tent to defeat Trump. As polls continue to show a likely close race in the 7 swing states that will decide the election, Monday's events reiterate how important getting every constituency to show up and vote is to both campaigns. Trump continues to be Trump. North Carolina is the only one of the 7 swing states that Trump won in 2020 and is a key part of his path to victory in 2024. In the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, which ripped across the South in late September, Trump has used the storm as a frequent opportunity to bash Harris and Biden and the federal government's response and to tie everything back to his immigration views. Speaking to reporters in a hard-hit area of Swannanoa, I hope I said that right, Trump repeated false claims about the Federal Emergency Management Agency's funding. Quote, they spent a lot of money on bringing illegal immigrants, people that came into our country illegally, and taking them in, end quote, Trump said. Quote, and all of the money they've spent, numbers that nobody can believe, so they don't even have any money for the people that live here. End quote. Anyway, So Trump also declined to denounce threats of violence against FEMA and other federal employees after a North Carolina man was arrested for threats earlier this month. Quote, does that mean that they're doing a poor job? We're supposed to not say it? End quote, Trump asked. He also drastically exaggerated the number of pre-screened supporters that he served at a Pennsylvania McDonald's on Sunday and praised early voting numbers from the Tar Heel state. At his Greenville rally, Trump reiterated his calls for mass deportations, closing the U.S.-Mexican border, and attacked Harris as being the enabler of what he calls an invasion of America. Quote, so you're either stupid, you hate our country, or they're trying to get them to vote, right? He said about Harris's immigration policies. Quote, and it's probably the third. She's turning beautiful small towns into a third world dumping ground, end quote. There's no evidence to support claims about non-citizens voting illegally, and Trump himself acknowledged that he had not seen any evidence to suggest the election would not be fair. Quote, unfortunately, I know the other side, and they are not good, but I have not seen that, end quote, Trump said. His suggestion that the final vote could be tainted fits with another part of Trump's closing message, not grounded in reality, that the only way he loses is if there's cheating. At the faith event, Trump largely stuck to his usual campaign stump speech, vowing, quote, to keep men out of women's sports, end quote, but also promising, quote, we will proudly say Merry Christmas again, end quote, which while basically accusing Harris, who is a Baptist, of having anti-Christian bias. Trump has another rally scheduled in Greensboro, North Carolina, Tuesday. He will also participate in a roundtable with Latino leaders in Florida. And then this last portion here. So Harris, Cheney, and abortion rights. Harris's campaign pitch to Republicans exists on the complete opposite end of the spectrum from Trump, both ideologically and rhetorically. She spent Monday traveling the blue wall states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, with Cheney bringing a message to suburban voters that support for Harris is not incompatible with conservatism, even for those who oppose abortion. Quote, I think there are many of us around the country who have been pro-life, but have watched what's going on in our states since the Dobbs decision and have watched state legislators put in place laws that are resulting in women not getting the care they need, end quote, Cheney said in Pennsylvania, referring to the Supreme Court decision striking down the constitutional right to an abortion. Quote, so I think this is an issue that we're seeing break down across the party lines, end quote. It's so funny. It's like, yes, I'm pro-life, but I'm starting it's like, oh, you're pro-life, but then now you're seeing the actual ramifications of medical care for women, especially those who an ectopic pregnancy. It's like some women, they literally have to wait until they're going into septic shock, and then that's when they can treat them. That's literally, again, Like, I worry so much about my sisters out here, like, if they get pregnant, because this fucking state, Texas, they don't give a shit about women out here, especially women of color, Latino women. They don't care. So, yeah, man, it's just kind of crazy to see, like, oh, well, I'm pro-life, but, I could not have foreseen the obvious consequences towards medical care, Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, so continuing. So the bulk of Harris's GOP outreach has been less about adopting more conservative stances of her own on policy issues, but more providing a permission structure for those who identify as Republicans, but not as Trump Republicans, to feel like they can support her campaign against the former president. Quote, in this moment, there are millions of good and honorable people who Donald Trump has fundamentally betrayed, Cheney said in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Quote, the decision to give somebody the power of the presidency means that you're handing somebody the most awesome and significant power of any office anywhere in the world, and you have to choose people who have character, choose people of good faith. Harris is scheduled to sit for interviews on Tuesday with NBC and Telemundo. Later this week, she's also slated to campaign with former President Barack Obama in Georgia and participate in a town hall with CNN. So, right, so that is the article there. So, again, this is sort of like the last stretch of the campaign, and they're going to make their appearances, and they're going to make their press conferences and interviews and such. I mean, dude, we're in it for the final stretch, and what can you say? I mean, man, I don't know, man. I'm just gonna like sit back and watch the show, and I'm definitely gonna drink pretty heavily on election night. We're just gonna have to wait and see, because again, they have all these stats and all these different projections, and all these different commentators. I mean, look, people had this attitude when Hillary Clinton was going to win. When Hillary Clinton, they were just coasting because, like, obviously, Trump couldn't win because, like, look at him, And then, of course, this was, like, right after the, Grab Him by the Pussy tape came out. That was the October surprise, which didn't do anything. Like, absolutely unreal. Unreal. I mean, what can you even say? We've been stuck with Trump, politically for the last 8 years, and we could potentially deal with him for 4 more years. I mean, honestly, he might die before that. It's crazy, man. I mean, dude, and again, if Kamala Harris loses, it's going to be entirely on her and the Democrats for running a just weak and lackluster campaign. And as you see here, she spent more time trying to appeal to moderate Republicans, which in extension is going to cause you to adopt a more conservative reactionary platform. Again, there's like pretty much like nothing here that would appeal or, benefit the actual voter base of the the Democratic Party, which is young progressive voters. That's who you need to appeal towards, because we're the future of the country. But they don't want to do that because they're overwhelmingly pro they're pro-Palestinian, left wing. Kamala Harris, she's not bringing about a plan for student debt cancellation. Again, as I said, no Medicare for all, no affordable higher education, police reform. I mean, I could go on. It's like, again, man, like, you want to sit here and talk to me, but it's like I actually have like a real platform that I expect candidates to appeal towards. And if you're not going to appeal towards the platform, and again, it's not like, oh, you just have too many demands. It's like she is not even meeting one single platform position. Okay, not a single one. Okay, again, like what is she doing? She literally just said, like, straight up, oh, I'm going to continue the same thing as Biden. Like, that's going to win. Like, unbelievable. Yeah, unsurprisingly, she's losing momentum because she's spent since July like pretty much just like sitting around just being like, oh well, we're not going back. No, we're not going back. Like that's all they can say. Unbelievable. They don't stand for anything. Nothing. Okay? Like a lot of liberals, especially online, they're just going to be like, what? Like you say so much about Kamala and the Democrats, but you don't say anything about Trump. It's like, well, yeah, I do, because, like, for starters, Trump isn't in power. So that's the one thing. And secondly, it's like, of course I'm going to hold the liberals and criticize them more to account, because you're sitting here pretending like we're friends and allies, but you're not serious about it. Like, that's why I'm so heavily going to criticize you, because you're acting like we can work together, and like you're very clearly not trying to work with us. Like you're just saying like you have to, like you're demanding the left to fall in line and not offering anything in return, not even like a simple modicum of like acknowledgement. It's just hostility and condescension. And then of course when the inevitable happens where you lose, yeah, you're gonna get more upset and you're gonna be like, well, you didn't vote for us, you didn't. Yeah, man. I'm just gonna be, again, because I am worried about like personal ramifications when friends and family ask about my plans. I want to be honest. I'm going to be straight up, and I didn't vote for Biden, and I'm not planning to vote this time. And it's not because I'm like, I don't care about politics. I very much do, but this electoral system is not sufficient. We need something new. Not that I know what that could be. Again, it's like if you're somebody who's critical of the government, it's like, well, do you have a solution? It's like, well, no, because I'm one person. Well, then shut up. Don't say anything. That's just the attitude. Yeah, man. 2 weeks. 2 weeks before the big show, and we'll get to see who the new emperor is. And then, not to, and also to go back, because I did open up speaking about Sinwar and the Israel, connection. Like, there could be a serious escalation. I mean, they had a recent leak of, like, State Department, like, intelligence report about Israel's, like, positioning and their posturing for the possible retaliation for the attacks from Iran. Like, they're still making their plans and their moves, and I wouldn't put it past Israel, because they're fucking assholes, that they would attempt the Iran strike, like, probably, like, right before the election. Because that's again, like, because of course they would. Because, I mean, Israel wants Trump to win. Netanyahu wants Trump to win. And it's just so fascinating how Kamala Harris and Biden, they have been unwavering in their support towards Israel, because they don't want to appear anti-Semitic, and we have to support Israel because they're our allies. Meanwhile, you got Trump and Netanyahu, basically, like, it's sort of unconfirmed, but they're basically conspiring behind closed doors. It's like with Nixon and, like, Vietnam. Like, Nixon, like, kind of purposefully sabotaged like the peace delegations. So like it's treason, but like, it's fucking ridiculous, man. Unbelievable. Like, in fact, there's like a lot of parallels right now to 1968. There's like, LBJ refusing to run, and then of course there's like the Democratic sort of fallout that's happening, and then of course escalations with a foreign war. The political divisions between foreign war. College protests, right? It's like there's very deep parallels to 1968. So doesn't exactly bode well for the election. Who knows, man? Because like we're fucked either way. Like whoever wins, the American people loses. That's just the basic story right now. And yeah, man. I mean, we just gotta wait and see. So yeah, that's at least what I wanted to speak on. Again, this is more of a free-form episode, but I did speak plenty with articles here, and this is just exclusively talking about the electoral results. And then, of course, after this election, who knows what's going to happen? So we're going to enter a new world. I mean, if Kamala wins, if she wins, good luck to her. Again, I didn't vote for her, so who cares? At least, this genocide in Gaza won't be on my conscience. It's just, it's really upsetting. And I don't blame people for feeling the need to vote for Harris. Like, if you feel that that's something that you have to do, that's your vote and your choice. I'm just explaining my reasons. And again, I don't live in a battleground state, blue battleground state. If the popular vote actually had an effect on the electoral outcome, then people could actually have an argument, but it doesn't. It's the Electoral College. So yeah. Anyway, man, who knows what's gonna happen? I'm just sitting here just thinking about everything that's transpired since 2016 up to now. 8 years. So much has changed in 8 years. And, I'm thinking about the political journey that I've undergone from, left-leaning, center-left, liberal, social liberal, Bernie bro. And then now pretty much just like a Marxist, Leninist, but the reason why I've gone on this journey and become more radicalized is because I've just seen the failures of this system. And, especially with COVID, again, it's just so insane how the COVID pandemic was handled and how everybody's sort of just moved past from it and not realizing the economic and sort of, public health crisis that we've created for ourselves. Again, it was truly a radicalizing experience to get laid off, right? And then also hearing from my landlord, oh yeah, you still got to pay everything on time. And I'm just I just lost my job and there's mass layoffs all over the country. How do you expect there to be any rent if nobody's working? And it's just you got to pay it. And luckily I was able to do DoorDash from that, but dude, man, I don't know, man. Anyway, that kind of got off topic with that. But my point is that just to see the general dismissiveness, the general disregard, and it's just business as usual, even though there's a genuine crisis unfolding, like a genuine apocalypse, okay? And still you got to pay your bills on time, and there's no social safety net, and then of course I'm still trying to stabilize my life as a result of that, but nobody gives a shit, It's I don't know, man. Anyway, I don't mean to talk about my personal struggles and setbacks, but it's I don't understand this attitude of the outside world has no effect. So, again, with Gaza and this genocide, it's well, it's not your problem. So don't think about it. Stop reading the news and stop thinking about it. Again, that's what I've been told a lot. It's just stop reading the news, and it's just so upsetting. And and then you see the actual ramifications of that, where our police are being funded and trained, not funded, but they're being trained by the Israelis. You see the sort of militarization that is happening in Israel being reflected in America. And of course our electoral politics now, where you see a lot of liberals now getting too comfortable with their reactionary attitudes, because yeah, man, they're getting annoyed. Liberals are getting annoyed that the left is uncompromising with our stance in human rights. And then of course if they lose in this election, they're going to become even more radicalized and they're going to become more reactionary. It's like they want permission to just finally stop pretending how virtuous they are. It's they just want an excuse to really go after the left and really start diving deeper into those reactionary attitudes. You see a lot, say with Anna Kasparian. She's recently coming out now, and she's oh, why I left the left, that's happening a lot with a lot of liberals. Or why I left the left, So again, this sort of election, if Kamala Harris loses, could be that catalyst for so many liberals to be well, this is why I left the left, because the left is, they're this and that, and they didn't fall in line, and Anyway, just bullshit. Which is funny because, not to get off topic, but like I did listen and watch TYT, especially during like the Clinton election, 2016. I watched that pretty heavily, but I did kind of get turned off. I mean, and I liked Anna for a while, like I really did. I actually had a bit of a crush on her, but as I kept watching the show and the program, I kind of just started losing interest, and I couldn't really put like I started losing interest, and I couldn't really put like I couldn't really like put my finger on it. I'm like, what exactly is it that I'm like losing interest in this show? And now that I'm looking back, I think it had to do with Anna. Like there was just something that was off with her. And I did like her a lot. Like I did like how fiery she was, but it was getting to a point where I'm like, okay, there's something off with her. Like she just seems mean. Like I don't really know. Again, like I don't want to be like that kind of guy because like I do respect women, and I do respect very strong opinionated women. I like that a lot. But again, there was just something with Anna that kind of like threw me off. That like it just like she just came off as being mean. Okay, like I don't know how to describe it. Like it was just like a mean attitude that I got from her. And to now see where she's ending up, where now she's like going on this grift. Yeah, it's like one of those moments where it's like, haha, like I knew that there was something off with her, and I knew, and again, I don't want to be like that, but again, it's just like there's just something that like it was in my gut that I kind of felt that was off, and now we're seeing the end results of that. But that's what's going to happen with like a lot of liberals, more like mean-spirited liberals who pretended to be leftists, that they're just being like, oh, well, this is why I left the left, because they're this and they're that. Anyway, that's how I'm really in it for the love of the game. Like I'm really like I do believe in this. Because, like, a lot of these liberals who try to get into leftist spaces, they're not actually genuine about it. And they actually have to, because it does require some reading and, like, understanding of, like, Marxist principles, which they're allergic to just naturally. Like, they don't want to actually entertain Marxist values. They're just doing so because they think that they can, like, inject themselves and, make friends and, like, oh, it's hip to be left-wing. And then it actually turns out that you have to do some real homework about it. And then that's when they're like, oh, I left the left. This is why I left the left. Because they're too dogmatic, or, some other shit. Or, like a lot of the times it's like a guy who's like, who's trying to get laid. And he's like, oh, well, I'm going to pretend to be left wing because that's what girls like. They like lefties. And then they never get laid because it's pretty obvious that they're faking it. And then they go, this is why I left the left because of feminism and the woke left, and like that's just nobody wants to fuck me, so that's why I left the left. Like that's why like a lot of people get into. Anyway, I'm trying to like close this out poorly, but that's just what I wanted to speak on this episode. Just a lot of electoral news, and this last 2 weeks, anything could happen. Really, anything could happen. This has been an eventful year, both domestically and internationally, especially with Israel. I certainly imagine if Israel is going to do their Iran retaliation, it's going to be like right before the election because they're fucking assholes. they would do that. Yeah. So anyway, so that's this episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you've listened this far, thank you. And of course, I'm recording this on Tuesday, October 22nd, so I'm going to try to release this as quick as I can. And then moving forward with the new episodes, especially with the potential for either a Trump or a Harris administration, just in general, like new political environment that we're going to have to navigate, we'll see what unfolds, man. And I've been thinking about, doing interviews. I mean, I just need to do in general more collaboration. So I'm going to have to reach out to people and get their input on the next steps forward, because again, this is going to be a new dynamic. Whoever wins, regardless, is going to be a new dynamic. And yeah, man, we're off to the races. That's all I got to say. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. For any of those who are dealing with difficult circumstances, hang in there. We're all in this together. I do appreciate those listening in. As I said, I do want to plug my Patreon. If you think this work is worthy And again, I'm kind of like not as professional as I want to be, but hey, I can get there with your support. So $1 support is early access if you'd like. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. Love you guys. We'll see you on the next one. The new age, the new presidency, right? We'll see you. Yeah. Thank you.